Hello and welcome to another Writers Showcase, everybody. This time I am joined by Tarek, Lucia, and Ursula. So, without further ado, let's just bring my guests on, shall we? Starting with...
Yo, what's up?
Good afternoon. Always a pleasure.
Good afternoon.
We've reached a milestone. We're now in the 100s.
Yep. Glad to be here for it.
Nice. And as ever, we have the angry Dun clone himself, Tarek.
Here's to the bard and I'm calling the plum. Here's to the beast and the rest of you scum. The cage is locked in and the town is aflame. And it's ours for the taking, though you get the fame.
Man, fuck this. I don't need to put up with your bullshit anymore, John. Only reason I'm here now is that as a courtesy to fucking you.
God damn.
You pulling that bullshit.
Whoa.
And yet, I would be pissed off if I was a clone of you. Couldn't have been anybody else.
Yeah, it couldn't have been somebody rich or famous that you could have actually gotten something out of it.
Couldn't have been somebody...
It could always be worse.
Yeah, couldn't have been someone talented, huh?
No, it could have been. It could always be worse. You could have been an angry clone of me.
Oh, I would have just shot myself.
Yes. I am talented. I'm just not monetarily successful.
Well,
that's sucking your own dick if I've ever heard it.
No, I just have a reasonable assessment of my own skills and abilities.
Took all of the energy and the fun right out of that, you know?
Well,
just took all of the fun right out of that.
Welcome to Dun's Writer Showcase, where egos are ripped apart, pride is destroyed, and everybody gets dragged through the mud.
Not me.
Well, except for you, because you freaking run the show.
You're proud enough to put your name on the fucking thing.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, Axel has been waiting in the background. We should let him on.
What's that? You tell me.
Drinking game. Take a shot every time Tarek gets angry, and take 2 shots every time Dunn pisses off Tarek.
Bro, we're gonna be in a hospital very soon.
Indeed.
Good Lord.
Alrighty. Time constraints first.
Yep.
No time constraints here.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be me again.
All right.
Although I would prefer not to go first. Go ahead.
So we throw Wissia to the wolves.
Yep.
All, from the looks of it, 3 of them, although Wolvie may count as 2, because it's in the name.
Yeah,
oh, wait,
enough.
we have Legacy now, so, all right, so 4.
Yeah, I believe it, Becca. I believe it. Anyway, no recaps because The only recap you're getting is that in the previous chapter, Lucia was eating dinner with Malik, and she kind of pissed him off a little bit. So, yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, we're gonna get on to the next chapter now. I'm just going to cold open this crap. She stared at the empty bowl, Lucia's eyes becoming heavy and drowsy. The air vents rumbled and the electronics hummed in her dim room. Then she sighed. 4 nights, Lucia whined to herself. 4 nights in a row, and I still can't taste any fucking spice, she groaned, shoving the bowl aside. Lucia's forehead creased, and she squinted. Wait, has it even been 4 nights? How long have I been on this thing anyway? She pulled out her H card, checking the date. Let's see. It was the 23rd when I first got out of the pod. So it's been 5 days? Lucia rolled her eyes, setting her H card aside, resting her upper body against the desk and slipping her arms beneath her cheek. She exhaled as she pressed against the cold desk. Her eyes slowly sealed, and she yawned. Why am I so tired anyway? Like, what time is it? She picked up the H card again, snarling as she read it to herself. What the fuck? It's 1800? Are you? Her eyes darted to her hands, seeing them begin to glow. Oh, shit. She dropped the device, sitting upright and watching the glow disappear, and Lucia let out a sigh. Holy crap. That was close. She controlled her breath, trying to keep calm. Then she blew and looked back at her undone bed. Too tired to do anything, too early to sleep, she slouched, then scoffed. Pfft, too tired to do anything. You kidding? Not like there's anything I can do. She glanced back at the tablet on her desk. Then she rolled her eyes and groaned. Guess I can always review, she thought to herself, reaching for the tablet and opening it. Lucia laid back on her chair, her eyes becoming heavier as she read through the thick walls of text. Finally, she yawned, pulling a leg up and pressing her knee against herself. Fucking hell. Why is he having me read through all this regulation bullshit? It's all just common sense. Lucia blinked, her eyes wandering off. Then again, there might be something in here I don't know about. Maybe even something useful. She stared back at the text, zooming out, seeing all the material she had left to read, and squinting. Yeah, fuck this noise. She closed it and started scrolling through the digital library. There's gotta be something interesting in here. Her eyes started to the digital library's history section, almost scrolling past it. She stared at it, pondering to herself. Then, finally, Lucia giggled. Is this what I've been reduced to? I get so fucking bored I start reading history? With a roll of her eyes, Lucia tapped on it. You know what? Sure, why not? I'm gonna be living there soon anyway. May as well learn about it. Lucia's eyes darted about, spotting the first book in the upper corner, one titled The History of the USR, a War-Forged Nation. She blinked and sucked in her lips. Okay, that's an interesting title. Her eyes scanned the rest of the section, finding similar titles. Her face began to pale, spawning one called The Cosmic Crusade, another titled The Wars of Extinction, and one more named The Scars of the Great Cleansing. Lucia's eyes slowly widened. What the fuck happened here? Why do all these history books sound so horrible? She froze, her gaze tracking back to the first book, and she opened it. Lucia saw the table of contents, skimming over to the chapter titled The First War of Extinction, and reading the first paragraph. The Wars of Extinction were a series of intergenerational conflicts that spanned the majority of the USR's history, the exact cause of which is still hotly contested amongst historians today. In total, the USR spent 178 years at war with the Irrigus Dominion. Lucia blinked, feeling her breath slip from her lungs. Almost 200 years? How the fuck do you stay at war with someone for 200 years? She started skimming through the text, seeing it came complete with the visuals. Lucia saw hordes of infantry, armored columns, wrecked vehicles, and infantry wearing battered and worn armor. Some of those soldiers were dreary in blank expressions. Then she got to the home front. Her eyes began to water, her breath slipping from her lungs. She saw bombed-out cities, once gleaming metropolises reduced to rubble, with people buried beneath the buildings. Her heart skipped a beat as the frozen faces overlapped with the ones from her nightmares. Then she read the title of the following section, The Great Cleansing. She folded her hands over her mouth, reading the opening paragraph with bated breath. The Great Cleansing was the Dominion policy of mass extermination. Implements of this genocide included the use of viruses, nuclear weapons, starvation, euthanasia, and mass execution. The Dominion was indiscriminate and brutal with their policy, with the youngest recorded deaths including newborns. Lucia blinked, a tear streaming down from her face. Newborns? You don't mean... Her eyes meandered, scanning the pages and spotting images of people reduced to skin and bone, the half-eaten victims of the virus bombs, and mass graves filled to the brim with bodies. She saw one of the soldiers standing over the mass grave. Its form was skeletal, with a charcoal black body that was chipped and scratched. The mechanical soldier had a face reminiscent of an owl's, only its wide round eyes were small, jagged, and red. Lucia exhaled, her breath becoming erratic and unstable. They couldn't be them, could they? Her eyes started to the description of the image. Corvendra? Is that what these things are called? She reached the end of the section, reading the last two sentences. The exact death toll is still hotly debated, as more mass graves are still being discovered. However, the lowest estimate puts it in excess of 90 billion lives lost, a full third of the current population. Lucia's eyes dulled, rereading it in her head. Those fuckers killed so many that they lost count? Finally, her mind emptied, her sorrow draining through her eyes. How? How could anyone do this? Why would anyone do something so horrible? Her brows drew together, and her eyes began to lit up. She sealed them, tried to control her breath. No, you can't get angry. Lucia snarled and lit up the room with a magenta glow. Why not? Why can't I be pissed? I should be! Those fuckers! They murdered all those people? And for what? What bullshit reason could they have? She clenched her hands, her heart racing with rage. No, there is no reason. I mean, they even murdered babies! There's nothing in the world that can justify that. Nothing! She exhaled. Her breathing slowed as her head cleared. Lucia glared back at the text. She swallowed and kept reading. The prime motivator for this policy was the ideology of the Dominion subscribed to, Caian Typhos, It is characterized by a belief that through the study of the universe and understanding its various laws, one could achieve a state of apotheosis. Lucia raised an eyebrow. The fuck does that mean? She pulled out her age card and looked up the words. She smirked and scoffed. These guys seriously believe they could become gods? Fuck off. Lucia dismissed it, but she kept reading. To achieve this, the Kaientifos prescribed that society be synchronized together. Thus, anyone who resists this form of collectivization will hinder the achievement of this goal and must be promptly removed from society. As scientific scholars declared humanity as cognitively insufficient to be synchronized, the species should be exterminated. Lucia gritted her teeth together as her brows drew together. Cognitively insufficient? She looked through her age card, looking it up. Her body heated up as her face reddened. We're too stupid? Is that it? They think we're dumb and that gives us a right to kill us? Lucia blinked, her forehead furrowing. Wait, but we're still around. So she skimmed through the text and found it. The signing of the treaty. A galactic map was provided with the USSR in the northwest, and the Dominion in the southeast, and a swath of space simply called the Autonomous Territories. She squinted, spotting the Vega system on the fringe of the USSR's border. The system Malik's frigate had made the jump to. Guessing Earth's in this autonomous territory space. Her eyes trailed off, finding an image of a chrome-plated human sitting beside a Corvendra, one in a metal frame that looked more ornate than the ones she saw before. Finally, she read through the text. The terms of surrender included relinquishing of all human-inhabited worlds and recognizing them as sovereign states. The powers refer to this region as the Autonomous Territories. However, also included was that the scientific party would remain in control of the Dominion, and its leaders would not be charged for their crimes against humanity. Lucia huffed, seeing the Corvendra's image overlap with the soldiers from her nightmares. They're still around? The people who did all this, they're still in charge? She sat down at the tablet, looking back over the images, seeing them overlap with the visions from her nightmares. Butterflies fluttered in her chest, and her throat clogged. The icy claws dug into her head as the harrowing realization dawned on her. She reached for her age card and texted Malik. Hey, we need to talk. Where are you at? He replied almost immediately. I'm about to go to the bridge. Why? Is it urgent? Lucia nodded and replied, Very. She watched the ellipses appear on screen. They bounced, and then it came through. Understood. I'll meet you there. With a sigh, Lucia got out of her seat, dressed, and left the room. Her heels clanked as she strode forward, carrying her tablet in hand. Her white blouse was buttoned up higher than usual, and as the air felt colder, Lucia scaled the set of stairs, walking into a large blue domed chamber with several screens projected onto the walls, displaying various information to the crew. In the center of the bridge was Malik, his hands folded behind his back as he spoke to a woman in white. He stood proud and tall, like always, his smile beaming and gleaming. Lucia stopped, standing at the fringe of the expansive room, waiting for him to finish speaking. Malik glanced away from the ship's captain and to her. He raised a finger and dismissed himself. One moment, please. The woman glanced back, her eyebrows jutting up as she stepped aside. Lucia swallowed and walked up to Malik, her arms folded, hugging the tablet against herself. Hey, how's it going? It's going well. In fact, I even have some great news for you. Lucia blinked, peering up at him. Really? What is it? Well, we're going to be arriving on Polis soon. In about 38 hours, even. Lucia's her eyes widened, and she chuckled. That that is great news. She moved her hair out of the way. Holy shit, you have any idea how bored I've been in here? Malik laughed. Yeah, being cooked up in this place will do that to you. Lucia giggled, but slowly recomposed herself, as did Malik. But then her smile faded away as she cleared her throat. So, she paused, her eyes dulling. There's something I wanted to tell you. Malik nodded along. Lucia watched as his radiant smile faded away. I think I know what happened to Earth. Malik's brows furrowed. What do you mean? We already know what happened. We discussed this the other. I mean, I know who did it, she interrupted. Malik's eyes started to the tablet she carried. So, I was studying when I got curious. I wanted to know more about the USR and I found a history book on it. She shuddered. The faces still etched in her memory, and the horrid screams rang in her ear. Yet, Lucia swallowed and let it out. Instead, I learned about the. She paused, recalling the proper pronunciation. The Irigus Dominion? Lucia peered up at Malik, seeing his brows pull together and his face redden. Yet she carried on. I read about the war you guys fought against them, the horrible things they've done, what they believe. I think Lucia, Malik snapped, startling her and drawing the crew's attention. She felt her heart in her throat, her eye Lucia staring into his fierce eyes. Have I ever seen him angry before? Why is he so pissed all of a sudden? Malik glared at the crew, so he pulled her aside, walking as far away from them as possible. Lucia watched him, seeing Malik pinch the bridge of his nose, his face contorted into a grimace as he sighed. Listen, Lucia, be careful what you read about the Dominion, okay? There's a lot of misinformation out there regarding them, almost all of it written by Corvenrophobes. Lucia's brows furrowed. What? But it says right here that it didn't happen, Lucia. Not the way they described it, Malik snapped. With her jaw still slacking, Lucia's head lightened. What? Malik sighed and continued explaining. Listen, most of the things you've just read was state-sponsored propaganda. Almost all the people who wrote that just hated Corvenras and wanted us to wipe them out. They exaggerated and stretched the truth to spread their hatred, all to feed the war economy. Lucia's brows drew together. Her lower lip curled out as her eyes watered. And how do I know you're not lying to me? Malik sighed. Lucia, when have I ever done something like you haven't? She muttered, a tear rolling down her face. But you haven't exactly been honest with me either. Malik hung his head. I know, I've already made mistakes with you, but my intention was never to lie or manipulate you. Lucia nodded, then let out a long and deep breath. Her gaze wandered off before she looked Malik in the eyes. But you could have been lied to. You could be spreading some made-up bullshit right now. Malik smirked. You're right. I could be misinformed and sharing lies to you right now. There's just one problem. I've lived it. She blinked, her eyes widening as Malik stalled. That war you just read about. I fought in it, Lucia, on the front lines. Lucia pulled the tablet closer to herself, watching Malik's expression turn blank and his throat jitter. Anyway, forget about the politics. You'll get plenty of that on Polis. Just keep in mind, it won't get you back home any sooner. Lucia nodded. Lucia nodded along, taking a step back. Anyway, get your rest. You're going to be very busy once training starts. Her head sank into her shoulders, and she nodded once more. Yes, sir. She turned around and walked up to the exit, glancing back at Malik as he started speaking with the ship's captain. Dark clouds formed in her heart as she looked back at her tablet. The images still burned into her memory. She stood there, catching her breath, and slowly realized that Malik's answer hadn't quelled her doubts. He exacerbated them. Okay, and that's it.
Nice.
You literally did what I was going to make a joke about.
What?
Oh, what was that?
Not all right. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but 19 billion sounds like a bit much, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, god damn it. Nicely done.
Thank you.
What's that a reference to?
It's
Holocaust denial.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Tarek
Basically.
made a prediction a while back, and Lucia proved him right.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I thought of when you gave a number.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you put a definitive or like an estimated number in there. It's like, well, can we really be sure?
I mean,
Damn.
yeah. But
I go ahead, sorry.
But no, the guys who did all that bullshit are still around and still alive. So, you could go and ask them if they killed 90 billion humans. They'll probably boast that they killed way more than that.
But I will agree with one thing Becca was saying. When I thought James called you not his pink-haired doll. I was gonna say, what the fuck?
Oh,
Anyway.
man.
Yeah, that.
I will agree with Becca, though. Like, the way it was described felt like it was being read from a Wikipedia article. If it was being read as propaganda, it would probably be a lot more inflammatory. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it would be trying to make people really upset. But it just sounded so... clinical would be the word I would use. Like, this is what happened. This is what happened. This is how it happened. Here's how many babies were killed.
Yeah.
So clinical. If it was true propaganda, it would have done something like not even the children were spared, or they took extra time making sure the women and children suffered, or they didn't even give them a chance to to fight back or to prepare or reduce casualties. You get what I'm saying. It felt too clinical.
No, that was the point. That was the point. The point is that this is what the actual text just simply says. And I just want to
but I get that. I get that. But what you got to remember is propaganda. Like, think about it. Think about the way Pearl Harbor happened.
I get what you're saying, but the point I'm trying to get at is it isn't propaganda.
They said
It's
you
just
said
a
it.
history book.
No, he says it's propaganda. The text itself isn't propaganda because it actually happened. It's all real.
So what's he trying to hide then?
Yeah. Well,
he's a Holocaust denier, as Wissia put it.
He is essentially a denier, and he has political motive behind it all too.
All right, I'll take your word for it. That's just my thought. Those are just my thoughts. I will also agree with you. You had this Malik guy sighing a lot. Like, you only
Yeah.
really need to say it once, but you said it like every other sentence. That was another thing I noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pointed out that you used I caught brows furrowed I think twice, maybe 3 times in this chapter, and I remember you used it like a bunch of times in previous chapters too. I was thinking you should use different ways to describe someone looking concerned.
Yeah.
Uh,
You know
they're
what?
the-
Actually, Becca, that's a great idea. I should probably do that.
Yeah.
Another idea could be that she points out he's really, really clinical about this whole thing. This is not usually how people react to that much death.
Look, yeah, sorry.
No, I was finished. Go for it.
I was going to say, look, if you look at the pictures, the smokestacks weren't built until after 1945.
God damn it, Derek. Oh my goodness. What kind of cursed joke are you going to bring up when I finish my chapter 2?
I don't know. You'll have to read it.
Yeah, I'm curious to find out.
Listen,
Yeah.
listen. Every time I hear something in particular, like a certain detail, a certain small thing, something like that, I hone in on that because it's like, okay, that I could do something with that. That is funny.
Indeed.
You know, I am going. I'm not really. Actually, no. You'll figure that out once you start speaking with like his friends. You'll figure that out. I was, yeah, because there's quite a few memes you could make about Malik secretly being an anti-Semite. Not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Oh,
I never said anything about the Jews. I could have been referring to the Gypsies.
Yeah, but when we start talking about like Holocaust denialism, we know who the primary targets were, and
The gays?
you know. Yeah, sure. We can say that.
Are you just saying this because I'm a Jew and you're a Muslim, so you're trying to make me feel bad?
Nah, I was going to say it because Malik is.
Nah.
I was saying it because Malik's a Muslim, and I'm like, oh, you could make all sorts of jokes about Malik being a secret anti-Semite because that's the stereotype.
They weren't really secretive about it, though.
I'm so glad you noticed. I've been working at it for years.
Oh, you need to cut that. You need to cut that to. I'm so glad you noticed.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
Nice.
yeah. Any other thoughts or comments, complaints about this chapter? Even how it slots into everything else?
I noticed that. What is it supposed to be? Cooked up or cooped up? I didn't know whether that was.
Oh,
supposed to be-
it's cooped up. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't know that?
I didn't look. I'm not the best when it comes to language. If you couldn't tell, like I have to go back over this shit and figure out just remove a few. He sighed and brows furrowing and shit like that because as Axel over has pointed out, I overuse that. I need to figure out different ways of expressing the same, different expressions or emotions.
Also, why on earth do you write "yeah" as "ya"?
Okay.
I've read your text and I'm like, what in the world?
Here's the thing. I'm only doing that with Rosa and nobody else. Everybody else just uses the proper spelling for yeah. I don't know what. It's just kind of. I don't know. It's just a thing with me.
What?
I guess I could like go through that and change that.
Look, Tarek, he's illiterate. Give him a break.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Still more literate
Well,
than Noble.
I pointed out in the chat a few things before I forgot them. Her eyes began to light up, not lit up, unless that was a misread. Might have been a typo, might have been a mispronunciation by accident. We're under pressure while presenting sometimes. And I
Well,
also
no,
I
sorry.
wanted to see what other people thought. I said, "Am I the only one that finds her cussing to be too constant and kind of unnatural?"
Yeah, that was
And
actually a bit of a concern of mine. Is that am I using too many swear words or not?
There are a lot of good examples of characters who do nothing but swear and like curse throughout their entire dialogue.
Negan
It's
from The Walking Dead.
Jack from Mass Effect 2. I've been replaying
Yep.
that.
Yep.
The Hound from Game of Thrones.
Me,
Kind
whenever
of
Dunn
agree with
speaks,
Legacy there. I wasn't gonna say it, but that's a based opinion. Women cussing is always a turnoff. For me personally, I agree with that. But I mean, like let's say we're watching a Marine movie, right? Like they're in the Navy SEALs or something. They're cussing like crazy. Like, yeah, that makes sense. That's natural. They do that. But in this context, this character, it just feels a little forced. I just want to see what other people think of that with the constant cussing.
Yeah, okay. Oh, by the way,
Oh,
how was this
okay.
chapter as an exposition dump chapter?
Quite good.
Yeah, no. The delivery through use of a history book was actually not a terrible way to do this. It was actually a pretty good way to give this information across. My question is, why does she know this?
Huh?
Why wouldn't you know about this? Like, this seems like a big event that would be
Hasn't
known
Yeah.
throughout human history.
Hasn't she been on a Captain America type thing for the past?
Yeah,
few
she's been in a
years?
stasis pod for about
Okay.
1,000. Yeah, she's been stuck in a stasis pod for 1,000 years, so she missed out on all this.
Okay, so
Ah.
it's been a while since I've heard the beginning of this or the start
Yeah.
of this.
That's why she's so shocked about all this stuff, because she literally had no idea that this crap even happened in the first place.
Mm.
So
Yeah, with that context, that's an excellent way to. I said so in the chat earlier. I said this is a good way to introduce lore. I like it.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, no complaints about like tonal issues or any of the or any poor characterization or anything like that.
Characterization wasn't a problem. Somebody was saying something about tone earlier. I think it was somewhere in the comments. Yeah. I can't.
It was actually,
Yeah.
I think it was the.
That was in
It was
reference to the.
cursing.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a reference to all
Okay.
the F-bombs. Yeah, a compliment wise, I feel like that conversation that she had with him it was good. It was very natural, and we already talked beforehand. You were asking me before we presented about using a book as exposition, and I said actually that's a great idea. That's used in fiction all the time, and that's very natural. So yeah, I'd say it was delivered well.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. I'm glad this one actually came out pretty good, or half decent at the very least. All right.
Nice.
I have to get off, unfortunately, for a prayer and all that stuff. All right. See you guys later. Take care.
later.
Have
Alrighty.
fun, everyone.
Good.
Bye.
Good afternoon.
See ya. Bye.
Well, thank you.
Tarek, would it be all right if I go after you?
Yeah, sure, that's fine if you really want to.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate.
No problem.
Also, thanks for the feedback. I just edited it.
I'm so glad you noticed.
Nice.
That little twitch.
Make sure to use that for the outro today.
No, it'll be the just end it. No.
You always use that.
It's perfect.
That one will come in handy later.
Yes, it
Yeah.
will.
Well, especially when you say you're awful, Dun.
I'm so glad you noticed. Wait, hold up. Done. You were just awful. Q. That's a Q.
I'm so glad you noticed.
That took too
That works
long.
great. That works great.
It took me a little bit to scroll to it. I was looking through another outro that I haven't used in a while, which is this one.
Holy shit. Okay, we're going.
I still have got to see those movies. I've never.
I have not seen that. I did. That is so out of context for me.
Yep.
That's
yeah, I was
hilarious.
using that for my outro for a very, very long time. Maybe I'll bring it
Nice.
back. I don't know. We'll see.
All right.
Got a bunch.
You should use the tomahawk as the outro today.
Maybe I will. That actually doesn't sound like a bad idea.
All right. So should I go on?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You're not done yet, so of course you should go on with it.
I should leave, right? If I had any sort of pride, I would just leave. Anyways, so as a refresher from last time, the last time we left off, Avion had arrived at the Dove's branch and was pretty nervous about meeting Catherine for the first time. So Marcel took her to the side and sort of taught her to role play, basically to act out conversations with, in order to predict how they will go. And she got a little upset because he started asking harder questions. But by the end, he said but by the end, she was ready, and that's where we leave off. That's where we start today. Serba had just retrieved the ball Aviana had threw when the entrance door opened and a woman walked in. Serba barked and forgot about the ball and ran towards the stranger. Once he was upon her, Serba jumped up and placed his paws on her shoulder and buried his face into hers and began licking it. The woman simply laughed as she tried to push Serba down. "Off, Serba," the Chancellor ordered firmly. The dog dropped to the floor and trotted to his master's side. Without Serba in the way, Aviana noticed just how beautiful the woman was, from her flawless skin to her pretty face and long, dark chestnut hair. This had to be one of the most beautiful women Aviana had ever seen. A large smile formed on the woman's ruby lips as she glided towards Marcel. "Marcel, it's nice to see you," the woman said. Her voice had a heavy accent, but was as melodic as a bird's song. "Catherine, it's always a pleasure to see you," Marcel responded by taking the woman's slender hand and kissing it. "If it's such a pleasure, then why haven't I seen you and Raquela at the Star more often? I almost thought you were trying to insult me by sending Vodoma's letter by courier instead of delivering it yourself," Catherine said with a laugh. "I apologize, my dear. I have been very busy after that incident at the festival, I assure you. When I have time, I will come to the Scattered Star, and I won't leave until there isn't a drop left in the entire house," Marcel said, laughing. "Very good. Now, where's the potential student Vodoma mentioned?" Catherine asked, placing her hand on her long white skirt. Aviana slowly got up and lowered her head as she approached the woman. Once she was right in front of Catherine, it was only then that Aviana noticed that she only came up to the woman's bountiful chest. Aviana kept her head low, but blushed as she tried to keep eye contact with the woman's piercing green eyes. "Hello," Aviana said nervously. "Hello to you. I am Catherine Vera," she said with a smile. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is..." Aviana stopped for a moment, not wanting to finish the sentence, before forcing herself to do so. "My name is Aviana," she said bowing. When she raised her head again, Aviana noticed that the woman had taken a step back, and the smile on her face had become much less sincere. "I see. Vodoma's letter didn't mention she was a Savette," Catherine said, turning to Marcel. "I suppose Vodoma didn't think it was relevant," Marcel shrugged. Aviana could see the reluctance growing in Catherine's eyes. "I was told you were the best in the city, and I would love to learn from a master." "I'm flattered, but I'm sorry to say I'm in no position to be taking students at the moment," Catherine said, her movements becoming more rigid. "Besides, there are other instructors in the city who are far more capable of teaching you." But Madame Vodoma said you were the best," Aviana protested. "I realize that, but you must understand I have a very taxing career. I'm I'm at the Star early in the morning and stay very late into the night. I'm sorry, I just don't have time to take on a student, Catherine said, growing slightly irritated. From what I've heard, you've been working the evening shift more than the mornings. I've also heard that you found the man who was courting you bedding another woman, so it sounds to me like you have more than enough time to spare, Marcel said, giving Aviana a sly wink. You've been spying on me, Catherine yelled. Of course I have. I promised Vidoma when we took you in that I would keep tabs on you, Marcel answered firmly. A moment later, the two of them had entered a heated argument. Aviana quickly put her hands over her ears as the two of them started shouting at each other, and she began trembling. As she did, she noticed Serba had taken refuge under the table, looking worried as well. Excuse me? Aviana said, but her voice was lost amongst the arguing adults. Excuse me, Aviana said again, without either paying attention to her. Stop it! Aviana shouted. Suddenly, both Marcel and Catherine turned to her, and Aviana noticed a relieved look on Serba's face. You were scaring Serba, Aviana said quietly as the dog took a spot next to her leg. Both of the adults blushed, embarrassed to compose themselves before facing each other again. Marcel, I know I owe you much, but this seems like a poor use of my time. She's a Savette, and if I'm seen around her, it could ruin my reputation. You may survive a blow to yours, but mine is the only thing that assures I have a place to eat and sleep at night. You didn't even know what a Savette was before you came to the city, Marcel retorted. You're right, I didn't, but I do now. Not to mention, Vidoma wants me to train her to be ready for the Magnolia Festival in under a year. It's a fool's errand, especially for someone like her. Stop talking about me like I'm not here, Aviana said, stomping her foot. The two adults turned to her again, with Catherine looking somewhat shocked and Marcel looking rather intrigued. Aviana bit her cheek in an attempt to keep her faux bravado up as she stared Catherine in the eyes. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm sure you are, but I don't think, Catherine began, sounding as polite as possible. I won't let you refuse, Aviana interrupted, crossing her arms in the same way she had seen Merrick do when he acted tough. A small smirk formed on Catherine's lips, and a soft laugh followed. What's so funny? Aviana yelled with all the bravado she could muster. Forgive me. I usually only hear something like that when someone is trying to court me. As Catherine's eyes looked into hers, Aviana noticed they had softened considerably. Vidoma's letter was right. Behind all that sadness, there is a spark, Catherine said, placing her fist to her chin as though mulling over something. Answer me one question. Why do you want to learn to dance? It just looks enjoyable, and I might be useful when I'm older, Aviana said, tripping over every other word and swaying. Catherine frowned. The last person who lied to me lost a tooth, little fledgling. Aviana gulped. It's all right, Aviana. You can tell her the truth, Marcel spoke out. Aviana sighed in relief. I want to learn because I think it would be helpful in learning to fight. I see. Show me how you usually stand when holding a sword, Catherine instructed. Aviana quickly moved into her stance, extending her left leg and bending her right knee. She could feel her legs wobbling as she positioned her hand like she was holding a sword up. If your opponent was smart, they would do this. Catherine's foot suddenly slammed into Aviana's ankle. She yelped in pain before suddenly losing her balance and tumbling to the floor. Aviana wanted to yell at the woman, but bit her tongue as she didn't want to ruin what little opportunity she had bought herself. Now stand up and stand in a position that your body feels comfortable in. Aviana grumbled as she got to her feet and experimented with her footing. She ended up keeping her feet several inches away from each other and putting her more weight on her right leg. This position is more comfortable for you, Catherine asked. Aviana nodded. Catherine began circling Aviana, her shoes clapping with each step. It does seem to be a more suitable position for you, one in which you can move your hips more easily. Catherine observed. Though your form is still sloppy, I believe I can work with this. You mean you'll take me on as an apprentice? Aviana asked. I'll admit, I'm considering it. Though you should know my tutelage does not come without a price. Aviana gulped. All I have is one dharma and a cloak, Aviana said. Her heart was growing heavy, knowing no sensible person would take such a pitiable offer. Well, then, it's fortunate for you I'm not after coin or material goods. Then what are you after? Aviana inquired. If you want lessons from me, you're going to have to work for them. Work for them? Aviana shot a quick glance at Marcel, who merely shrugged. I will instruct you 3 days a week. I will instruct you for 3 days each week, during the mornings and afternoons. Then in the evenings, you will come work with me at the Scattered Star, performing whatever tasks are needed of you. You'll be compensated for your time. However, some of your wages will come to me as compensation for the lessons. What duties will I be performing for you? Aviana asked hesitantly. Common tasks for a girl your age: cleaning, running food to customers, disposing of refuse, and whatever else I require, Catherine answered. I will only warn you once, though. If I think for even a moment you are not taking your lessons or duties to me seriously, I will cancel our arrangement entirely, Catherine said sternly. I understand, Aviana said, playing with her fingers. Very good. Then I will meet you here tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Aviana nodded. Thank you so much, Miss Catherine, Aviana said with a bow. Catherine gave Aviana a small smile before turning to Marcel. It was a pleasure seeing you again, Marcel, and I hope to see you and Raquel soon. I will be sure to find time to do so, Marcel responded. Catherine bowed and gave a beautiful smile, Catherine bowed and a beautiful smile now graced her lips. Thank you both. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must go, Catherine said before gracefully walking towards the door and exiting the building. The moment Catherine left, Aviana nearly fell over as she sighed in relief. Are you all right? Marcel asked. That was just the scariest thing I have ever done, Aviana said, feeling slightly dizzy as her body relaxed. If you were that scared, then I'm even more proud of you for convincing her, Marcel said, patting her back. Aviana smiled. But now I'm going to be working for Catherine 3 days a week. Shouldn't I be more focused on my other training? The way I see it, the Scattered Star will teach you things you cannot learn on your own, Marcel answered. What can't I learn on my own? Social skills. Do you mean like talking to people? There's a difference between talking to people and communicating with them. I think the Scattered Star is the perfect place for you to learn that difference. What do you mean? People of all walks of life walk through its doors, from the most affluent princes and seasoned mercenaries to the poorest beggars and tone-deaf minstrels. Depending on where they are from, each one may have a different way of communicating with other people. That almost sounds exciting, Aviana said, feeling a little giddy. That's good, because you're going to have to put the skills you learn there to use very soon, Marcel continued. I'm going to speak to Raquel tonight about enrolling you in one of the Alchemist Union's classes. The Alchemist Union? Yes. You are very, very far behind academically, and the longer we wait, the harder it will be for you to catch up. If we don't address your lack of literacy skills now, I fear you may never catch up. Literacy? It means the ability to read. I'm going to learn how to read? Aviana said excitedly. It will be one of the many things that you will learn, Marcel answered. I can't wait, Aviana said, her heart fluttering. Just realize, though, Aviana, you will not be allowed to quit. I'm sure you've heard that many potential students quit on their first week. You're not allowed to be one of them, Marcel said firmly. I understand. I don't have any intentions of quitting, Aviana said, eyeing the books at the front of the room. Very good. Now, use today, the rest of today, to take care of what you need to. You won't have many chances after, Marcel said, taking his seat again as Serba followed. Marcel said, taking his seat again as Serba followed, taking his place on the floor by his master's leg. Yes, sir. Again, thank you so much, Aviana said as she turned to face the door. Just as Aviana was about to walk to the door, she looked back at the table where she had placed the book she was looking at earlier. She bit her lip and turned to Marcel, who was now deeply focused on the paperwork he had brought with him. Aviana slowly edged to the stand, picked up the book, and held it under her shirt. It's only borrowing. It's not like I'm going to keep it, Aviana said to herself, only half believing what she was saying. As Aviana approached the door, she heard Marcel cough loudly and froze. You wouldn't be trying to steal that from me, now would you? Marcel asked. No. Well, isn't this what all my training is for anyways? Aviana asked. Marcel got up and approached Aviana, who was now shuddering and shaking as a cold sweat dripped down her forehead. Let me impart some wisdom. Every raven is a thief, but not every thief is a raven, Marcel whispered. What does that mean? Aviana whispered back. It means you don't use your training to take whatever petty object catches your fancy. Your training is meant to keep everyone safe. But I haven't had any actual thief training, Aviana protested. That's because not everyone trusts you to use those abilities correctly. And with what you're doing right now, I can't say I blame them. I'm sorry, Aviana said, walking back to the bookshelf and placing the book back on the table. Consider that a warning. Now, would you like to borrow that book? Aviana's eyes lit up. Can I, please? Aviana asked. Very well, you may borrow it, Marcel said, giving her a small smile. Aviana quickly took the book back off the table and hugged it to her chest. Thank you so much, Marcel, Aviana said happily. You're welcome. Now run along. Aviana nodded and rushed to the door and ran out into the street, holding the red leather book tightly to her chest. And that's the end for this week.
Very nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Quite good.
Yeah, I liked a lot of the discussions that are being had in terms of the bartering stuff. I thought that was very nice. I also liked the discussion about not all ravens are thieves. Not all thieves are ravens. I thought that was a good little line.
That I think I've had that one under my belt, like sort of before the book was written. Like that was I think,
nice.
One of the production notes.
Excellent. You wouldn't think of stealing that from me now, would you? Then the cold sweat. You could tell she was petrified in that moment. Oh, little kids. They learn.
But that the only thing I got to comment is on what Rebecca says about, although it's nicely paced, if we wonder if we need Catherine to go away and think about it. I want to say no, because one of the things that I feel that Aviana can kind of do, especially when she's confident and because she's a child, I think people would be drawn to that. You know what I mean? Like we've only really seen her as this nervous wreck, but right now she's trying to exude a confidence she's never known, if you get what I mean. Like she's being taught to value herself. And this is kind of what one of Marcel's lessons was in the last chapter, was that if you portray yourself in the right way, with confidently, if you speak loudly, if you look people in the eye, they will, even if you're like a lowly peasant, they will probably respect you because you're showing that you have dignity, that you have some authority. Not only that, but the way I think I viewed Catherine looking like this is that, well, we'll know if she is we'll know if she's serious if she quits the first day. You know what I mean?
Right. It was all very believable and flowing, so not really any issues there.
And you know what, Becca is right about that, But the thing about that is I should probably add the line that like the Scattered Star is one of the busiest taverns in the entire city. So they're constantly looking for people. So if I add in that line, I think that would take care of that.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the way I was always intending the Scattered Star. The Scattered Star is essentially imagine, and I hate using this comparison because of the implications now, but like imagine the cantina from Mos Eisley, like how it's this big place where almost everyone gathers. You know what I mean? So
Gotcha.
yeah, except it's not full of like scum and villainy. It has a much more diverse clientele, if you will. Marcel said, from the most affluent of princes to the most tone deaf of minstrels and peasants, everyone walks through those doors.
Right.
Nice.
But what did you think of Catherine?
She's a cool character. I like her.
I got called away in the entire beginning portion, and I was rushing to get back in. I completely missed it. I apologize.
All right,
So
that's fine. That's fine.
I came in right at the part where Aviana snapped at them and said, "Stop talking about me like I'm not here." And then I followed the rest from there. I didn't get anything before that. My bad.
Actually, I like Becca's idea that we'll find work for you rather than specifics. Like, I think Avian, I think the real reason I did that was because the last time we had a line about like a more menial job for her, the end result was like as a servant or prostitution, and that was from the Archmage. So I was trying to make up for that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I have a question. This is a character focused story. I'm noticing.
There is no
a character driven.
This is a very character driven story. There's not really a main antagonist to this story, nor did I feel like even in the beginning there should be. This is her. Pardon me. This whole story is about her trying to find her place in this world.
Right. That's what kind of tale this is specifically.
Yeah, like this specific story. Now, once we have, that's not saying I'm not setting up antagonists for later, especially later on in the book, in regards to Jeffrey. Like I kept calling him Joffrey, but I think Jeffrey is much better because it distinguishes itself from Game of Thrones, which I've never watched.
Yeah.
But if I call him like. Obviously, Joffrey, calling someone Jeffrey instead of Joffrey, you kind of lose the hard R, but in all seriousness, I feel like Joffrey is a much more intimidating name than Jeffrey. But I think you could still make like Jeffrey work, if you know what I mean. Like,
well, I mean, you could come up with another name, like I don't know, Alistair.
I'm kind of committed to it. It's at this point I'm kind of committed to it because. I think later. I sent you that chapter. I let people preview, right?
Me? No.
Yeah, the one where she gets interrogated.
No, I did not. I did not get that.
Okay, I sent it to Aspiring. I sent it to Becca. I sent it to a few people. I think once you kind of associate the name with what he's doing, he becomes a bit more intimidating.
Gotcha.
Oh, Jeffrey Dahmer. You know what? Yeah, you can't make Jeffrey a name.
Oh man. This is what I was noticing. Is this story written in what's it called? It's the term for I was doing research on the different kinds of third persons because I'm writing in third person omniscient, so I needed to make sure I was doing it right. This is third person limited. But there's like another word for like unknowing, like not knowing what's going on. It's entirely limited to. So basically, it's third person for strictly Aviana. So
exactly.
I've noticed that, and that's how I'm realizing that's why the pacing of your writing is different than everyone else's. it's
Because
not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just that's just simply the method by which you're using.
I again, like the whole entire philosophy behind this book was that as she grows, the reader does. Like when she
Right.
started, she had a routine. She got up, she went to look for work for the day, she goes back to her hovel, and then she starts the next day again. But now she's starting to before the book started, she didn't know Marcel was the chancellor of the city, essentially the mayor. She didn't know that. If he came up to her, she'd have no idea who he was. In kind of the same way that, like, if your mayor of your city came up to you, would you really know?
Right.
Exactly.
Especially if you're 12 years old.
Exactly. Especially, like, she
Yeah.
knows who the king is. She knows who. She might know. She wouldn't know who the Archmage is, but she knows who the king is. She knows who the queen is. She knows who the royal family is because she's seen the parades and everything. But that's really all she understands about the government structure. That we have a monarchy. That's it. Like, that's all she understands.
Right.
But now but even now, like, she's 12. She still doesn't understand what Marcel does, really.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I see the strategy here. It makes perfect sense. You know, the narrator doesn't know anything. It's basically there is no narration. It's just strictly what Aviana sees is what you see, and that's the story. And that makes perfect sense. It's the right kind of thing for that. You know, similar to a novel about, you know, like a young child, like a 6-year-old. Those can be written in that same style and work really well.
Right. Exactly. So that's the whole philosophy behind the point of view for this story.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, chapter was good. Nothing wrong as usual. Pretty much flawless.
I'm gonna get to a fucking publisher, and they're gonna just throw this back in my face and say it's shit. And I'm gonna say, now hold on here.
Hold on.
Here, all agree it's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! Imagine.
Oh Lord. You didn't read the chapter. It is an intense chapter for this poor child. I'll send it to you later, Axel. You might like it. I can send it to you, Don, if you.
Oh, the interrogation scene. Yeah, we might as well check that out. I think I was meaning to reply to your message asking people to see that, and I think I forgot. I think I was working and I was going to, and then I completely forgot.
All right, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you in a little bit.
Bet.
All right. So, enough about my greatness. It's your turn.
Tarek, I'm assuming you did not read the chapter 1 or the prologue of mine.
I don't remember, man. I'm gonna be honest here. I might have.
Well, you're in luck. I have a detailed recap for you.
All right.
I was thinking last night. It was like 1 a.m. and I was thinking, crap. The last time I did a recap, I was stuttering and stumbling like crazy. And then I realized I'm just gonna write down the recap and read it. That way, it'll be detailed, straight to the point, and within 5 minutes. Because for some reason, saying it, I mess up like crazy. So.
Hold on 1 moment. Aspiring. That's because if I'm gonna send you Act 2, it's the entire fucking rest of the book. I decided to kind of cut the act shit and just make it one long thing, and it's not ready. Also, nice. You weren't supposed to have the context.
So basically, it's not done yet.
Shut up.
I'm leaving.
Oh man. Yep. It's just me and done now. Oh wow. Oh my goodness. Is he for real?
Angry.
Oh man, no, Tara, come on.
Come back. Come back, Turk. Come back.
Tarek. Press the load button, not the load button. Press the invite link. And then get put in the back room and then stay there for 20 minutes. All right. Okay.
The cry
all right.
of true love brings him back.
I'm gonna try to.
Go ahead, Axel. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to hear this.
Oh, I was going to say, no, it's just that I rambled for the last 30 minutes. I owe it to someone else.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to conclude the second half of chapter 2 because of the time limit and the like the attention span. Chapter 2 is very long, as you guys can tell, because I introduced a bunch of characters really fast, and yeah, and so we are going to finish that up. And let me give you guys, especially you, Tarek, a recap because this will be very confusing without it. All right, so in order to finish the rest of this chapter, I first need to fill you guys in on what happened in the prologue, since the ending and the prologue are directly connected. All right, so this is Shamayim. This is basically a multi POV novel, and the focus of the story is all about the spiritual realm. So the prologue started off with the father telling his kids over a campfire about the Shamayim, that it is a mystical, distant kingdom full of wonders untold, like seas of glass, and has creatures covered completely in eyes and all kinds of crazy things living there. Meanwhile, it is ruled by an all-powerful king. And this, so in the prologue, the POV is from Nathan's point of view, who is a 6-year-old child. And when his father is telling these stories, it really fascinates him. And he's sitting there with his older sister, Dinah, who's a few years older than him, and his baby brother, Reuben, who's, an infant at that time. And the mom's holding the baby. So Nathan's dad, Urim, tells his kids about the place and that long ago an uprising happened, and a coup attempt to overthrow the king led to a third of the residents there being thrown out and cursed to residing in the earth. A humiliating defeat for their rebellion. He tells his kids that these Shamayim entities called exiles live all around them, and that we must fight them daily. Do not listen to their hateful words. So they pretty much live in like a plane of existence that can't really be seen, just above our own. And in the prologue, there's a soldier nearby standing watch and listening the whole time. And I forgot to add this in, that this actually takes place in Africa. So this is a village in Africa with Urim and his family, and there's a military presence because of warlords and terrorists in that region. So the soldier who's listening, he gets threatened, and he cuts in and interrupts the father because the father starts talking about using power from that place, that people can use it to heal the dead and heal wounds, or raise the dead and heal wounds. And the soldier accuses Urim of teaching witchcraft to his children, which is a big threat to them, and that's what he's fighting against. So Urim has to stand up, and he basically confronts the soldier and defends his family. And he tells him he basically tells him a parable. He says that just because sharks in the ocean are dangerous does not mean the rest of the ocean is. In fact, the ocean is a rich place for harvesting all kinds of useful things like salts and fish, and it's a beautiful, expansive place that's very deep and still unexplored completely. And he basically tells the soldier that he's teaching his kids about the potential of the ocean while also preparing them for the danger of the sharks, instead of just making a blanket assumption and saying that it's all bad because there's sharks there. And he basically says that the people that the soldier is referring to, Urim calls them shark harvesters, that they go into the ocean, they capture sharks, they strip out their teeth, and they use them as spears, and they use them as weapons against their enemies. And he says, we are not like those people. In fact, we raise our arms against them alongside you. We are not your enemies, they are. And so keep that in mind. That's going to be important for later. The soldier, of course, doesn't take kindly to this, and he threatens the family and makes them go inside and on a curfew, and he destroys the campfire. And so the prologue ends where Nathan turns around and he sees a snake wrapped around the soldier's neck, yet no one else does, and not even the soldier is reacting. And so Nathan freaks out, and he doesn't understand why no one else sees it, especially the soldier. And basically the snake hisses at Nathan, and then the soldier scowls at him immediately after. And then Nathan blinks, and the snake completely disappears, as if it was never there. The soldier returns back to his post, and Nathan and his family head inside, and that concludes the prologue. Really quick, any questions?
Shit, a lot of fucking things happened.
Yeah, that's why I gotta. These chapters are dense.
Jesus,
What was that?
Fuck.
What was that done?
Seems pretty dense, yeah.
All right. So then, chapter 1 begins basically the real story based off of that context, and we get the POV of a university teacher called Rachel, and she's really interested in the fourth dimension, ancient cultures, and stuff like that. She's trying to prove the existence of a dimension called the ethereal plane. That's just theory, and she thinks that ancient civilizations harnessed it and tapped into it, and she's trying to prove it. And so she's using colleagues' physics classroom, and she's getting really excited. And so then when she leaves, because she has to go, she can't stay in there on that particular day. There is a man hiding inside the back of the classroom who was there the whole time, and he waits till she leaves, and then he basically burns it down, causes an accident that looks natural. A fire breaks out, and he basically destroys all her evidence and collections. And that's the inciting incident for chapter 1, and there's a lot of implication there. And that's how that ends. So in chapter 2, we return back to Nathan's POV, and this time he's an adult and he's about to get married. And we get introduced to his 3 friends, one of them being Elia, his fiance. And it's basically like Tarek, you might remember from like a while ago. It's basically that same chapter 1 I did back then, but reworked. Instead of like Nathan hearing voices like in the original, it's he sees weird things that no one else can. So like the chapter starts off with he sees a dragon on the back of the storyteller just hanging on his shoulders, and he's just staring at it, and it's staring back at him, yet no one else in the store and not even the teller can see the thing. And so then the dragon like lodges its claw into the man's shoulder, and then he wiggles his shoulder a bit, and he gets angry, and he says like, move it, we got a line. He doesn't understand why this guy Nathan is staring at him. So then Nathan pays for the wedding suit, and then he leaves. And that's how chapter 2 begins. And then we get introduced to his friends and stuff, and from there, after introducing them, which was in last week's showcase, Nathan sees another one of these occurrences in his hometown. And let's see, where was it? He sees a homeless man on the side of the street in the shopping district of his city, waving a newspaper and screaming at people. And he's screaming about skull catchers. They're basically tribal terrorists of the region, and somewhere within the continent. And everyone is basically ignoring him because he's this crazy homeless guy that's yelling at people. But Nathan stares at him particularly because he has a gargoyle on his back, just like the dragon and just like the snake. And Nathan is just thinking as he's pondering on the thing. And through narration, I reveal that he's been seeing these things all his life, and he came to the conclusion that they are manifestations of their emotions. And he doesn't understand why he's the only one that can see it. And there's implications there that his friends and everyone thinks he's crazy, basically, so he doesn't talk about it often. And when Nathan grabs a newspaper from the guy, he sees that the terrorist attacks that he's warning people about happen in Ethiopia, but they're nowhere near in Ethiopia, they're in South Africa. So he concludes that surely they won't. Like, what is this guy on? They're not going to attack this place. This place is heavily fortified. Surely, right? And that's where we leave off. As he and his friends are traveling down the street, Nathan sees a hunting store, and he thinks about his father who's working inside. So he says to his friends that he'll catch up with them later, and he goes inside to talk with his dad. And that's going to be where we continue off. And that's going to be that's where we're going to continue off. Any questions from you guys before I begin the rest?
No. Go for it.
No questions. All right, Tarek, you caught up? You understand everything? And anyone else who's watching this later?
Sorry about that. I had to use the restroom. But I can't say it's simple, but I'm caught up.
Yeah, there's a lot of world building done very quickly, and there's more to come. All right, let's do this. Done. Start the 20-minute timer now. I'm gonna start off a paragraph from before the scene change, just to bring in the flow. All right. Bear with me, guys. I stutter and I'm not very good at this, so yeah, just bear with me. I'm gonna try my best. Continuing with his friends, Nathan peered behind him one last time and watched the soldier scold the screaming man. The gargoyle hissed at the soldier loudly, but not even a flinch of a reaction came out of him or the maniac man or anyone else nearby. No one could see it or hear it except Nathan. He turned around and continued to walk. They made their way along the streets, and as they got close to the corner, Nathan looked at the very familiar hunting store quickly coming up to his view. Small but humble, he smiled when he thought about who was working inside. "Hold up, guys! I need to go talk to my father. I'll catch up in a bit." The other three yelled in confirmation, and Nathan opened the door to the shop, while his friends headed to the ice cream store across the street. Bells chimed his entrance, and Nathan stepped inside. "A very precise hunting tool, this one," Urim said as the customer studied the rifle. "Used one myself to shoot down a buck once. Yes, sir." Nathan looked at the counter. His father looked over the shoulder of the customer he was helping and smiled before returning his gaze to the exchange. The shop guest held up and studied the bolt-action rifle before he eyed Urim himself and nodded. Urim was clearly a Heartlander too, just like him. He could tell this large man with the white dreadlocks was experienced with this trade. His arms looked worn and were clearly the types of hands that had tied traps in the woods, and the arms that had skinned animals in his lifetime. The customer nodded with respect. "With one shot can kill a buck dead, eh? Think I could get 2 colonizers with one shot aligned just right?" He smiled as he watched Urim. Urim's smile dropped instantly and his eyelids narrowed. The customer immediately took notice that Urim did not appreciate the joke. I'll take it," he nervously said as he placed the rifle back on the counter. Urim's smile returned and his eyes lit up. "Sold! Happy hunting to you, good sir." His voice boomed loudly as he slapped the man's shoulder. The man laughed nervously as Urim's expression instantly changed back, as if he never changed at all. "You as well, mister. Thanks." Nathan patiently strolled the shelves of the store as they finalized the exchange. All around him were displays, guns, bullets, traps, bait, and fishing supplies all hung on shelves and walls with price tags. Quietly above him, American country songs were singing slowly about fishing in Great Lakes. It was a humble place, and Nathan was happy for his dad that he found a job to his liking in Bengalia. It was a familiar life like their old village before it burned down. It wasn't exactly the same kind of life, but Nathan was far happier to see his father in a place of familiarity rather than in an alien environment like a supermarket. "Thanks again! Come on back if you need any more rounds!" Urim boomed as the customer passed Nathan. The man smiled and nodded back at him and then nodded at Nathan as he pushed open the door. The bells chimed his exit as the door closed behind him. Urim looked over at Nathan and Nathan smiled wide at his father. "Abba, my son!" Urim outstretched his arms and Nathan embraced them. "Good to see you, boy, good to see you." "As with you, Abba," the two hugged tightly. "What brings you to the shop?" "Well, Ab, I wanted to let you know, Dan, Trisha, Aliyah, and I have all made our shopping selections. We're ready for the wedding tomorrow." "Oh, how wonderful!" Urim bellowed, clapping as he walked the store. That Trisha is quite the character, son. Very funny and kind colonizer, I will say." Urim chuckled as he remembered how his friends interacted with him and Dan when they entered the clothing store. "And that wonderful girl, Aliyah," Urim said, straightening the boxes of ammo. "She is just a marvelous woman. A true and precious soul she is." Nathan's eyes sparkled as he thought about her. He remembered her lovely face and her reaction when she came out with the dress. He thought about her sweet voice and that radiant smile. He thought about her eyes and how much he loved to look into them. "She truly is, Abba. She truly is." "Oh, my son, I am so proud of you. Your mother would be ecstatic if she was here to see it. Oh, how much does that girl remind me of her. She will make a spectacular mother one day too, son. I look forward to you giving me my children's children." He turned around and pointed at Nathan with a huge smile. "Do not disappoint me now, boy." He let out a bellowing laugh as he turned back around and straightened the fishing rod displays. After a few moments, Nathan's laugh and smile both quieted and his voice lowered. "Thank you, Abba, and I'm sure Dinah's wedding would have been wonderful too if she were still here." Urim stopped. A sharp silence instantly struck the room. Nathan swallowed. He looked around at the shelves nervously. Urim moved slower now, and he placed some ammo packs very gently back into their spots, as if he was suddenly handling precious glass. I think so too, my son. The store speakers continued to sing a mellow country song of a farmer who lost his ranch and the tough times ahead in his financial struggles. All the while, laughter of civilians echoed faintly outside the shop's doors. Abba, Nathan swallowed nervously. I have to ask. Nathan, you saw it too, didn't you? Urim stopped. Nathan swallowed again. He watched. His father simply stared, looking for many moments at the bait refrigerator. Very slowly, his hands began to move again, and he opened the small door to all the containers filled with the live bait. Saw what, son? Nathan's mouth opened, and he scoffed in disbelief. Seriously? The soldier, Abba. You know what I speak of. Urim slowed his movements. He quietly continued to rearrange the bait cans in the fridge so their labels faced the front. Nathan stared at him, teeth tightening as he continued. It had a snake wrapped around him, Abba, and I know you saw it too. Nathan, I know you saw it too! Nathan moved forward and slammed his hand on the shelf next to the fridge. He stared intently at his father next to him, while Urim stared at the bait labels. He refused to look at anything else. It was wrapped around his arm, around his waist, his neck, that thing! Nathan waved his arm around in disgust as he pictured the memory. The night of the attack. The slithering massive snake strangling the European soldier. The same one from the previous weeks who kicked down the campfire and had sized up his father. The night the real skull catchers invaded. That same soldier's eyes were pitch black with no pupils. Something was influencing him. Nathan was positive Urim saw the snake wrapping around his feet too, right next to him when he was a child. He remembered seeing his father gasp when it slithered up the man's leg. Nathan could never forget it. Like the dragon today and the gargoyle, he knew he was seeing these things then too. All his life he was seeing them. I could never forget it. Nathan trembled his voice as he stared at his hands. Abba, it was strangling him, and its head was wrapped around his arm, his neck. He held a hand over his throat as he emphasized the horror of it. And when he aimed the pistol at Dinah, Nathan! Urim slammed the fridge shut with a startling force. Labels and bait cans scattered everywhere as the machine stumbled on its legs from the impact. He turned to look at Nathan, and Nathan saw his eyes were flaming with anger. Please go find Reuben. He spoke slowly, forcing his words to be calm. His face, however, was clearly enraged. Tell him to get ready for the wedding. Preparations still need to be made. Nathan clenched his teeth. He looked into the eyes of his father, anger combined with disbelief of his denial and refusal to acknowledge Dinah's death, all boiling under his skin. It bit his hand. Nathan forced the conclusion to his sentence. The hand that shot my sister. And no one else saw that snake except you. Nathan pointed a finger at his father as his words were sharp, cutting through the air like blades. He glared back into his father's eyes, demanding an answer, a confirmation, something, anything. I am not schizophrenic. I am not crazy. We can see them, just like you told me that night, just like you said our family could, Abba. He leaned in closer as he hissed the hated words. Or actually, I should change that. He leaned in closer as he hissed the words he hated. We can see the exiles. The silence deafened the air. Unblinking, Urim closed his eyes and breathed in deeply before opening them again with clear struggle and heaviness. He immediately composed his face, and he only repeated himself again. Go get your brother, please. I will not ask you again, son. I believe he is with that soldier again. Nathan's shoulders dropped. He looked down to the floor and sighed. This was to be expected. Ever since her death, Reuben had grown up here, and not in their previous village home near Ethiopia. His baby brother never knew of the life that they lived before, or how peaceful it was before the skullcatchers attacked. After losing Dinah, Urim moved his wife, Nathan, and Reuben to Bengalia to be safe under as many sorry. To be safe under as much of the military colonization as he, oh my goodness. To be safe as to be safe under as much of the military as he possibly could in this fortified place. Though it was a different, more chaotic life, Urim did not want to lose the only family he had left. It was the only choice he had, and the best he could do with his income. Now Reuben was growing into a young teenage boy himself, and he was drawn into the Bengalian war propaganda against the skullcatchers and African warlords. Reuben had made it abundantly clear that he very much wanted to be recruited into the military ranks. He clearly wanted revenge. I will go find him, Abba. I think I know where he is. Relieved, Urim nodded. His shoulders relaxed and heaved as he breathed a long and deep sigh. Thank you, son. Urim turned around and he began to fix the mess he made in the bait fridge. Oh, excuse me. Grabbing the scattered cans, he began to face the labels back to the front as if nothing had happened to scatter them. The ridiculous, cartoonish faces of the worms smiled at him gleefully. It was as if the poor things were happy to be bought and freed only to find a much worse fate, a fate to be used to draw in a much bigger predator. Nathan watched his father for many moments and he shook his head. Was any of it true? Urim stopped. Son, please, be honest with me. Dad. Urim turned around quickly and looked at Nathan's face. Nathan stared at his father with trembling lips. The kingdom? The Shamayim? He choked out the words, trying to keep his voice steady. Was it all just a lie? Those stories, Abba? Was it all just a waste of time? Are there no good things inside that ocean? Urim's eyes closed with heavy emotion and he turned back around. He leaned forward and held his hands tightly on top of the fridge as if he needed to keep from falling. I don't know. The silence grew colder. Nathan looked down and closed his eyes. He raised his hand and wiped away single droplets of tears off his face. He nodded a few times and breathed in slowly. I'll go get Reuben. He stared at the floor for a moment and then began to walk towards the door. Nathan! He stopped. Nathan. He turned around reluctantly. Urim quickly approached him. He placed his hands gently on his shoulders. The father raised Nathan's chin up and he looked at his son's face for a few moments, deep and heavy pain residing within those eyes. He nodded and tried to form some resemblance of a smile. You're ready, he simply said. You will be an excellent husband. She is so blessed to have met you, and I am so proud of you. I love you, son. Nathan's hardness collapsed and his lips began to tremble as he nodded back gratefully. His eyes flooded when he closed them and he leaned into his father's chest, trying to stop the rushing waters. Thank you, Abba. The tension had flowed away with the tears and Nathan held on as his father's strong hands held him up, and he bawled into his embrace. Probably should change that word. Neither said a word, and Urim's eyes began to streak with waterfalls of their own. After many moments, both men backed up, and Urim held his son's shoulders again. He shook them both firmly, and he nodded his head, this time truly smiling. You got this, son. Go make your father proud. Nathan smiled back, nodded deeply, and turned around. He opened the wooden door, and he turned around one last time as the bells chimed loudly above his head. Thank you, Dad. As soon as Nathan stepped outside and breathed in the air of the shopping district again, something sharp and tense struck him suddenly, and he immediately knew something was wrong. Hey yo, Nato! Trisha called out as the other two followed her back from the ice cream shop. Everything good with the pops, homie? Nathan didn't hear her. As he stood there, he froze in place. Something in his head was ringing. Nathan looked around the air quickly, trying to find the feeling. The air was moving, far too quickly, like the feeling of a vehicle speeding past with that rush of intense wind left by its wake. But when Nathan looked around, there wasn't anything like that happening. Everything and everyone seemed perfectly normal. He looked at the buildings and at the skies. They were blue and everything looked calm, but Nathan could feel something was terribly off. A resonating sensation unlike anything he had ever felt before was rising quickly in his soul, and its intensity was deafening. Guys? Nathan quietly spoke. His arm hairs began to quickly rise. Looking concerned, Dan walked up to his friend and tapped his shoulder. Hey, bud, you good? You zoning out on us again, Ach? Nathan looked at his friends, but he immediately knew they weren't what was wrong. If anything, they were the boat in the storm, and they were fine and perfectly safe. No. He looked at each one and confirmed this. His soul, his inner self, whatever this was, it was calm, relieved. Nathan looked back up to the clouds in the sky. Instantly, the sensation intensified. He was feeling a spike of growing danger, of a threat. Something's not right. Alaya took notice of Nathan's haunted expression and worry filled her face. Nathan? Hun? Ignoring her, Nathan turned around and walked more into the street. His three friends each looked at one another before following behind, quickly growing worried. The pressure was increasing as Nathan thought about it. As Nathan thought about it, it was like a Geiger counter. And as he walked, he could feel it steadily ticking. What is this? Nathan looked down at the sound of movement and he jumped as a snake suddenly slithered past his feet. It hissed, but it sped off around him, seemingly in a hurry and not bothered to bite him. Nathan cried out and looked at the others, but each of his three friends just stared at him like he was crazy. They can't see the snake? Oh no, they can't see the snake. His heartbeat began to intensify. The snake that was on the soldier's arm, the dragon, the gargoyle. He looked back down and watched the reptile as it slithered away. He saw as it passed through numerous feet of the civilian crowds, yet not a single soul reacted to it. Nathan began to run. His friends yelled out behind him, but Nathan couldn't lose it. Its presence was no accident. A snake was slithering through people's legs and not one person was reacting. Something was wrong. He saw the dragon, he saw the gargoyle, now he saw the snake. It stopped, turned around at him, and hissed angrily like it knew he was following it. This odd behavior startled Nathan as he stopped and tilted his head. The creature turned back around and slithered straight over a civilian's shoes, disappearing from sight completely. Nathan stopped. The man whose shoe it slithered over was standing ominously still. He did not so much as flinch. Nathan stared at him, and for some reason, the standing hairs on his body shifted as he looked at this particular bystander. Something was different about him, like an odd figure looming ominously in a dimly lit alley. Nathan immediately grew a sense that this one man, something was not right about him. The gray-haired, Eastern-looking man looked around at the crowds as he held his hands in his jacket pockets. His eyes scanned the scene slowly as they eventually panned over to Nathan and his worried friends behind him. Nathan looked and studied him. He was clearly from the East, either Japanese, Chinese, Korean, or one of those. From this distance, he wasn't certain yet. The expression the man had as he was standing there and eyeing everyone was daunting. The man looked at Nathan plainly and then walked away into a cross street. When the Geiger counter in Nathan's chest receded its ticks, Nathan knew he found the source. Nathan followed. He turned the corner and he saw the man in a new crowd, stopping short as a soldier was approaching him from the other way. The soldier was shouting suddenly, raising a scene as he stopped the man dead in his tracks. That's good. The soldier must have caught on to some suspicious behavior, just like Nathan did. Nathan watched from the corner intently. The soldier approached the strange man from behind, demanding to see some identity. When the man turned to face him, Nathan was not ready for what happened next. In a flash of an instant, a pistol flew out of the man's coat and he aimed it straight at the soldier's face. The thunder crack of power rattled the walls of the shopping district with intense fury, as the soldier's skull was instantly shattered and he collided with the streets in a spraying mist of red raindrops. Nathan fell onto the ground in horror. To him, the gunshot shattered reality itself, and Nathan blinked when it happened. He saw it all, as the horrific trauma escalated the sense from seeing this same exact thing so long ago. At that moment, Nathan was 6 again. At that moment, Nathan saw the same scene in his old village, that same memory projected before his very face. The Eastern man transformed into a soldier with the blackened eyes, and the snake that was aggressively biting into his hand. The soldier who was shot in the face became Dinah, and Nathan's heart dropped when he saw her terrified expression, facing the man who was about to kill her. The visuals of the old and new before him collided, and Nathan's eyes were pierced with blinding light as reality itself shattered before him. Nathan blinked, and the second world flashed before his eyes, in its entirety. He looked up and saw that hordes of creatures hordes of creatures creating all that wind and movement he was feeling before, that sensation he couldn't explain, were everywhere. Thousands of monsters, winged beasts, dragons, single-eyed creatures, entities he could not even describe. Along with that, Nathan saw a looming cloud of thick darkness hovering over the forest nearby. They all flew and walked about the buildings around him, creeping and crawling monstrosities of all shapes and sizes, wrapping themselves around the buildings and the store signs. Nathan looked up above these and saw a massive, expanding glass ceiling high up in the sky, blocking the way to a crystal universe instead of the clouds and the sun. It reached out into gorgeous cosmos unseen, and Nathan was marveled by it. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The glass ceiling had countless glowing humanoids walking upside down on it, their heads facing opposite of the ground below Nathan, like a mirrored world opposite that of his own. He blinked several times as he could not understand it. They were like flies, sitting on a glass ceiling above his head. Immediately, each and every one of those glowing figures raised their faces and looked right at him, as if him seeing them there alerted each one of his presence. Their hollow eyes, sockets of mist and light, all pulsated as they did, making a mural across the sky of countless circles glowing ominously. "We see you." Nathan screamed. He screamed loudly. Civilians roared out into screams as well. However, Nathan was not screaming because of the murder. Civilians panicked as feet shuffled rapidly around him. Some people kicked him around in the face in blind panic. His friends screamed and ducked, calling out his name as numerous people brushed past them and knocked them over as well. Heartlander and European tourists alike covered their heads and necks in panic as they ran from their lives from the murder scene. The Eastern man simply stood still and sighed as he looked down at the soldier's body below him. He held a finger on the bridge of his nose and pinched it before slowly opening his eyes again, looking most annoyed. He placed the pistol gently back into his jacket pocket as he stared at the dead body at his feet. As Nathan watched him, he saw him then pull out a different trigger device. He looked in all directions of the street before his eyes met with Nathan's again. Nathan stared at him and he stared back. Those blue eyes were cold and emotionless. The sight of the thing in his hand stopped Nathan's breath, even his very heart. That was it. That was the source. Every humanoid of glowing eyes on the glass ceiling above immediately looked right at it in unison. Every creature and creeping thing latched onto every building, all widened their eyes as they gazed at it and the man holding it. He squeezed the trigger. The building above Nathan shattered as an explosion roared out from within. The blast barreled debris in all directions and the thundering blow screamed in rings within everyone's ears. Nathan's screams were quickly muffled by the smoking debris covering him like a thick black rain cloud. All around the city, rumblings of explosions shook the very foundation as bomb after bomb planted all throughout Bengalia detonated one after the other, like firecrackers snapping in different intervals, the ones closest to the trigger device detonating first. Out in the woods, many waiting humans watched the explosions as they hid behind the trees. When one of them stepped out in the open and held up a machete into the air, he roared loudly and gave out a fierce, deep battle cry. Upon seeing this, each and every other human like him all broke into a run and sprinted into the city, screaming loudly in unison with their leader, blades drawn and ready to fight. As the bombs detonated everywhere within, machine guns began to open fire, and blades met the confused screams of the civilians caught inside. Skullcatchers, Nathan could only think as he sat there under the rubble. Skullcatchers! No! He tried to quickly move the debris off of him, but it was heavy and he felt suffocated. He needed to run to get to his friends, his dad, to Reuben. He struggled as he tried to push off the debris as the screams and gunshots rang in his ears all around him. The shark hunters had just declared war. All right, hopefully I didn't run out of time. That concludes chapter 2. It was probably a lot, wasn't it?
You actually got there. You actually ended about on a little bit early.
Nice. I'm getting the flow right. That's good.
Holy fuck!
I was excited to present this scene. This is intense.
No. That was fucking dense. Like I get the emotional high points and everything. I thought that was 40 minutes. I thought done. No offense to you. I'm not saying anything about the content when I say this, but I thought Dunn had fallen asleep, so you were just waiting for him to kind of.
No.
Yeah.
These first few chapters are really dense because the story is really dense. It's a whopping 77 chapters of good stuff.
Okay, so you took. Okay, so yeah, you started. Oh yeah, so you started about. Okay, so you took 30 minutes, but
Oh, okay.
so I'm looking at the time thing. I think you started about like 2:28, and it's 2:58 right now. So
Sorry about the times of stuttering and stuff. I was trying.
No,
my
you
best.
were fine. You were
you
good.
didn't study.
I think I got through. I think. How did I do with the emotional delivery of Nathan and his father?
You did
I think
good.
that was
You
good.
did good. Yeah.
What did you guys think of that scene with the dad refusing to acknowledge his daughter's death and basically that confrontation?
Well, the whole thing I thought was that okay, so schizophrenia runs in the family.
So it would seem.
Schizophrenia does not. It just runs in the family. That nobody wants to accept reality.
Yeah, you'll see in a later POV. I hinted at it that Nathan's brother Reuben is hanging out with a soldier. That's going to be one of the POVs in like chapter 5, I think. Yeah, 5. And Reuben thinks his brother is crazy. He like rolls his finger around his head like, yeah, my brother sees things. He's really weird. There's a little bit of that. That's why he doesn't always mention it to his friends. Like he sees these things right in front of his friends, but he doesn't say anything because they think he's schizophrenic, so he just keeps it to himself. But he remembers when his dad told him as a kid about the supernatural realm and that kingdom, and he truly wonders if could it be real and could I actually be seeing things in it.
So no, he's crazy. He needs to be locked away.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you. I did a few times, but that's only because I didn't like how that was worded, so I was trying to reword it, but I was struggling so bad, and I was like, crap. Because I recently, it was brought to my attention that colonization in Africa is not a thing anymore, and this takes place in the modern day, so I was like, oh, crap. So I got to change that. So that was something I forgot to edit out.
No, it's still a thing. It's just they refuse to call it colonization when it involves the Chinese.
All right.
For whatever fucking reason.
I forgot to mention in my recap that in the first half of this chapter, there's a whole lot of in this place. There's a divide between the white civilians and the African civilians. They don't really like each other, and there's like a bitterness there. So when the customer said to Urim, "You think I can kill two of the white skins with one shot?" He was trying to tell a joke, and Urim did not appreciate that. Obviously, considering what happened to his daughter, you can understand why.
Well, apartheid is still apparently a thing in the modern age. Didn't know that.
What is still a thing? I can barely hear you. Apartheid. Oh. Yeah. Any comments, criticism, concerns, things that you guys noticed? Lay it out.
Nothing really constructive, to be honest. It read good. It had a nice flow to it. Like I said, it's dense. I thought 40 minutes had passed. So a lot of things in here.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of stuff in there. I'll have to listen back to it, or
I do have the first 3 chapters all available for free reading in the self-advertisement channel, including this one. That's actually what I'm reading from. It's basically like a sneak preview to the entire book. This is where that preview ends.
So could you actually move that to the short story shares?
I can do that. You bet.
Since that way I can kind of differentiate it a little bit, because advertise your content is kind of for YouTube.
Ah, gotcha. It read good, Tarek 2022. Hey, I'm glad. Tarek, I don't know if you remember that first showcase I ever went on, but did that like bring any deja vu back to that?
I don't remember your first showcase, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
If I'm being 100% honest,
That's
usually when it comes to
hilarious.
these, I just take it day by day, if you will. I just kind of focus on the here and the now.
Especially
Okay,
since
okay.
you probably hear so many.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
brain is fucking full, man.
This version of the story is reworked. It's called Shamaim, and yeah, it's multi POV now instead of before it was just it was that same scene and same city, but I changed it to instead of Nathan just being a traumatized dude, it's basically Nathan. He can see these strange things, and that's his unique take on the story. Meanwhile, Rachel, on the other hand, is looking into the science of it, and she's trying to prove it while the beings that live there are actively working against her, and she has no idea.
To quote Alex Jones, I see demons, Lord.
Destroy the child, corrupt them all. Basically, yeah. Yeah. A quick question: did anyone catch the foreshadowing? Not in the recap, in the chapter.
Well, you can't know it's foreshadowing until you get the revelation.
I suppose, but you did get the revelation in the chapter towards the end. Basically, the bait cans. When I was describing the bait cans in the fridge, that they were smiling and looking, happy, but when they were actually, being used to bring in a much bigger predator, that was a little bit of foreshadowing that, these skull catchers were about to destroy this place. A terrorist attack was just about to begin.
All right, I'll take your word for it on that. I'll just take your word for it on that.
yeah, that depends on the reader. That truly depends on the reader. But that's why I put that in there. A little bit of that. All right. Yeah. Was it clear that when Nathan stepped outside, was it clear that he was tapping into something new? So this whole time he had been seeing them, seeing glimpses of these creatures and stuff, but when he saw the Eastern man, who that's going to be a character that comes in later, when he saw him shoot the soldier in the face, basically the trauma of seeing that again caused him to see everything for the first time ever. And was that delivered well and clear?
I'm thinking about it, and yeah, you know what? Yeah. I think it came across pretty clear.
Nice. I think this reads better than it is listenable. I'm not sure.
You know what? I would honestly have to agree with you, because a lot of things happen in this, and when you're listening to someone read something this dense, it's sort of hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It's kind of hard to keep track.
Yeah, you got to read chapter 1, especially when Rachel is like in her classroom, and how at the end Nathan saw the glass ceiling, and that these like humanoids were walking on it, but they were upside down. That's basically a reference to what was in chapter 1, where it was like a back and forth POV of Rachel, and she was studying her stuff, and then it was a POV of these two like spirits walking on the ceiling, and they were commenting on what she was doing, and she had no idea they were there. All right, listen, this isn't the sort of book I'd get in audiobook.
Listen, man, my skull is fucking throbbing right now.
Well, it looks like Mr. Bard requires a melatonin because of his great chadness is too much for even him to handle.
The good sir needs to digest the content that was just delivered to him. It was a little too much. You can probably tell the types of novels I like to read.
Yeah, I can see that. The one, fucking Jerusalem by Alan Moore. If you can whack a man with that and he'd fucking die, it's like getting hit with a brick.
Oh man, yeah, that's that. Nice.
Listen, I appreciate the craft I appreciate your love of the craft, and I can definitely appreciate the workmanship. I'm just saying, for something like this, you throw a lot of things at a person all at once. and I agree with Becca. This isn't the sort of book that most people would look at it as an audiobook. But again, I respect you quite a bit for what you're doing, and I respect the craft. There's a lot of love in here. There's a lot of forethought. It's just, holy shit. It's like having a one-way conversation.
Yep. It'll all be slowly revealed and explained and kind of like naturally understandable as the story goes on. I suppose I might have got a little carried away with my I need to hook the reader immediately right off the bat. Might have got carried away with that in these first 3 chapters. I mean, shoot, chapter 3 is dense too. Just wait. Chapter 3 explores more into like Rachel's family, and yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yep. That's great.
Also, melatonin. I don't need a goddamn melatonin. I need some fucking
What's the? I don't really take very many medications.
Like Motrin or something, or Advil or some kind of
insulin.
Insulin's for diabetes. You can't
remember. Aspirin.
Aspirin.
Yeah.
I just can't. I don't really take very many, like just even like small time non-prescription medications. I just don't, so I don't know many of them, so I can't name them off the top of my head.
Oh yeah, Becca, this is definitely I haven't read Sanderson, but this is one of those stories. You know those sci-fi books you read where like, scientist is out in the desert and they get struck by this weird invisible thing, and stuff like that, where it's just, and then you cut to another point of view where someone gets their head cut off and you're like, how does it all connect together? Find out, and then stuff like that. Like, I love that stuff. Stuff that makes me really think and like really like I'm really curious. I love that. That's engaging.
I think that's why mine is ending up being much shorter than I thought, because it's only from one viewpoint. You know what I mean?
And that's why mine's so goddamn long.
Yeah,
I mean, I had to try to squeeze it into 77. I plotted out the whole thing. It was overwhelming me. My head was hurting with all the plot lines and the subplots that go on here. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Coincidence, because mine is now too.
Folks, I would like to publicly declare that in showcase number 100, a monumental victory was achieved today. I have overwhelmed the Derek.
You've overwhelmed me doesn't mean you've beaten me.
I have not bored him like many others have done before. No, I have overwhelmed him with density of the novel. I see this as an absolute win.
Well
well
played, Mr. Axula. Well played indeed.
Now that you mention this, I'm really glad I split this. This would have been way too much all in once.
Oh my lord.
This chapter took me forever to write and edit too. It was intense. I was like, man, I gotta fit all this stuff in here, and I gotta make the inciting incident happen too.
When I was editing my thing the other day, I've actually had to remove like a chapter and a half because the flow of things just didn't work the way they were supposed to anymore. It became a completely different. It just didn't. The chapter just didn't make sense to have anymore in regards to where it was and what was going on, because it didn't fit in with everything else. If you get what I mean.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I just realized? Okay, you know what this is like? You know what this is a lot like? And I didn't mean to do this, but it's similar. You remember those trailers for the game Death Stranding?
Oh, yeah.
This is just like that. This is just like that. Bro, it's awesome writing a supernatural story about, like, biblically accurate angels and stuff like that. Because I can go wild with my imagination. I kid you not. I have a character that is a 3-headed dragon who talks through one head at a time. It's freaking awesome.
Look, that's just fucking Ghidorah.
Pretty much, yeah. But this dragon is like this dragon's like fumes are coming off of him, and he has like one eye for each head. So yeah, I just have a lot of fun with like the supernatural, and towards the end of that chapter, when Nathan saw everything, like the entire other world, that I had a lot of fun writing that.
The funniest, actually, my favorite thing to do, honestly, is to do character interactions for my thing. My favorite line, honestly, in the book, the one I'm doing, because you like having all these interesting creatures and stuff. I love character interactions, and my favorite one in the book is just one conversation between Aviana and Tarek. They're at the tavern and everything, and she's asking him for money. And to pay for his fucking drink. And he just straight up asked her, "When did you get so bold?" And she answers, "About a week after I met you." Because a week after is when the story started.
By the way, highlight Becca's comments, taking notes on how to punish Tarek in the future.
Oh no, she's putting on Oxala's like audiobooks.
Oh man. And you know what? I'm having a little fun here too, because you guys may notice I'm using, this is like the third new profile picture. The one I'm using now is actually how I picture Urim.
Oh, neat. He
Yep,
kind of looks like, I guess, an older, bearded Jedi version of Idris Elba.
Yeah, he kind of does. Yeah.
Maybe that's what the artist who made it was modeling off of. They were probably modeling off of his face. You know how art is. You gotta have references.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'm gonna be doing that from now on to make it, exciting and interesting and more like feel alive, basically. Like for every like different POV, I'll show like a Pinterest image of like one of the characters in the chapter. And yeah, and this one was the last one. Last week I used one how I picture Nathan, and then that's also my profile picture on Discord. And then this one I decided I'm gonna use Urim for this one because the chapter is really focused on him. That really intense conversation.
All right.
I'm glad you guys liked it, and I feel achieved that I overwhelmed I didn't bore Tarek. I overwhelmed him.
Not that hard.
Man, long session listening to Uxella's books. I mean, this is my first, but as every writer does, I have ideas for like a sequel, but not like a sequel, like a spinoff in the same exact time as this one takes place with like one of the characters. So yeah. If I can get this out and get this done. Wait, I just did that. Get this finished.
I just wonder how Becca can make Tarek do anything.
Oh yeah, I saw what you two look like.
It looks like Mr. and Mrs. Incredible, actually.
If you don't actually start cleaning the pans properly, we're gonna have a nice long session listening to Uxella books. We're listening to 5 chapters, honey. It's about 4 hours each.
Sweetie, it's 6 o'clock. Time for your ball crushing.
Oh man.
At that point, I'm grabbing my keys. I'm out of here.
And then she'll lure you back with chocolate.
One last question, especially for Dunn and everyone who was here last week.
How do you reach that high, Becca?
And head pats. I can see it. Gotta go on her tiptoes.
I have to lift her up.
I got a few more questions before we get to Dunn's excellent novel. How was, I think I already asked, but was the conversation with Nathan and his dad, did it feel like, did it feel real? Like, did it feel like
we would be having? Yeah.
Nice. I've watched
dialogue.
Better Call Saul, and that's definitely inspired me with dialogue to make really good dialogue. So I'm really trying to I see how excellent writers write good dialogue, like Quentin Tarantino and so on, and so I'm like, okay, I want to do that too. And so that was one of my attempts to do so.
All right. I never watched Better Call Saul, so.
Oh, it's quite excellent, man. It's quite excellent.
I've heard.
It's really well filmed. It's mesmerizing. Like you just see these weird scenes that don't make any sense. That it puts you in, and it makes you figure out what's happening, and you're just you're glued to the screen because you're like, whoa. I'm just used to this kind of media. You know, stuff that really makes you think. I'm used to that. That's why I'm writing like it. All right, yeah. Wissia, read. Listen to Tarek's reaction when I finished it later on your own time. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I did have a little bit of trouble following it. Do I
Gotcha.
look like a...
When did you lose track?
I think just kind of part way. I think after the conversation, I was kind of like, okay, what exact kind of drifted in and out of kind of like, okay, what exactly is going on? And wasn't able to kind of, once I kind of lost focus for a few seconds, I kind of lost the flow and kind of.
That's
gotcha.
I agree. Same thing honestly happened to me. But the thing is that the quality is very good, but like Becca said, the problem is that something this dense and it's an audiobook, it's not easy to go back.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you guys mean. There's this book I'm reading, this sci-fi story, and there's this one POV where a character goes into raw details on the economics and the structure of just the future and stuff, because that's just what he does, you know. And for me that I'm not into that stuff, it's overwhelming as hell to read. I have to read the paragraphs over again, or I have to read them slowly because I'm like, whoa, this is too much. This is confusing. And then I get to one of the other POVs, one of the homeless kids, or one of the other ones in that sci-fi story, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can follow this pretty well. It's simple, it's easy to understand. So I feel you guys on that. That's probably the same alternative where it would read better, because reading it you can pause and maybe reread. While with an audiobook, it's just going and going, and you're like, whoa, I can't keep up. What's happening? I can't keep up. My brain. Ow. Especially when it's live like this.
Right.
I hear you on that. Yeah, this chapter would probably read better than it would audio read. Yep, I'm gonna put it in that channel like you said, done. All right, I don't mean to take up any more time. If anyone else would like to share anything, please, I would love to hear it. And comments and here live.
Cool. I think we've covered everything.
Alrighty. All right. So we are nearing the climax of the story. What has just happened is we're on page 117 of 141.
Wait, what? Wait, what did you just say? What?
I have long arms, like an orangutan. Do I look like a freaking orangutan? No shit, having right. All right.
Oh my goodness, this is great. It is an honor on number 100 to have. I bet we lost a lot of people because of what I read. People were just like, I can't, this is too much.
I am being thrown so much freaking information.
Yep.
Right.
Probably came across Warhammer lore. I don't know.
I was exposed to Warhammer lore for 2 hours. This doesn't compare.
Yeah.
This was worse? Or was it the same?
No,
Or was
yours does not compare because Warhammer lore is denser than yours.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, I don't want to be that dense. There was one time I was drunk on a VC, and Wissia was telling me Warhammer lore, and it hurt my head so bad because I was drunk that I literally I bailed out of the room I couldn't take it. I felt like I was gonna throw up. That's how dense it is. Sorry. Continue.
That's how I felt after I got out of Tenet. I
Wait, Tenet, the Christopher Nolan film?
Yep.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Is it really that dense?
Yeah, I had a headache. I went into work right after I finished watching it, and I had a headache until I went to bed.
Would you say it's good like Inception, or is Inception better? I really like Inception. It's an excellent movie.
Well, the characters are pretty much all nothing burgers.
Oh.
The main character doesn't even have a name. He's just called protagonist, even in the credits.
Ah.
Yikes.
And I think the mechanics of the plot are interesting to figure out, but there's nothing there nothing really substantive there other in terms of characterization and even complicated issues. It's just mechanically figuring out how all the time stuff works together, but there's nothing really there's nothing of depth there.
Gotcha. That's a shame. Christopher Nolan films can be really great. Like, I really loved Interstellar personally, and Inception.
I like those two movies as well. I think the main thing that makes Interstellar a lot better than Tenet is the emotional stuff that Matthew McConaughey brings.
Right. That and the soundtrack. It was a really good soundtrack.
Yeah, like when he sees all the messages and he's crying. Like that's great. But with Tenet, there's nothing like that. There's some measure of tension. There's tension throughout, and there's some neat physics. But it's got no good character stuff. It's mainly just look how clever I am, the movie. And it does show how clever Christopher Nolan is, but there's very little there in order to get.
So it's basically just like an action movie that's clever, instead of like a like Interstellar, like a not supernatural, a sci-fi thriller that's also emotional. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I should probably note that my writing is going like that scene with Nathan and his dad. This is going to be an emotional journey too. Not only is it dense with like the sci-fi element and the supernatural element, but I have a few scenes that I was brought to tears when the ideas were first given to me. So I'm like, whoo, this is going to be intense if I can deliver it right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to it.
Nice.
I like stuff like that. Big fan.
I do too. I'll have to watch Tenet with everybody, and
I would join that. I would like to join that. That I would be interested in.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out a time. It'll probably be on an off day when we're not doing House of the Dragon or Rings of Power.
And by the way, I'm going to say it again because I said it last week. That scene where the High Priestess in your novel is talking to the giant was so funny. Can you please pass me some books? I am bored out of my mind down here. Passes her, makes books appear in her cell. Thank you. I love that. I was thinking about that scene. I was like, that would be so funny in like a Hobbit-like movie, or like a Lord of the Rings style movie. That would be such a funny scene. So I just wanted to compliment that.
Yep. So that actually leads me into a segue of what is going on now. So for those who have been following, we're nearing the end of the first book. There's only 24 pages left before we are finished. Single-spaced, admittedly, so it's about more like 40 pages left. But we're reaching the climax. Mordred has entered the city of has gotten to the city of giants with the intent to rescue the high priestess who's been captured by the king of the giants. Now it's his job to get her out before the the other Elder Ones can come and replace her with one of theirs and make their job really, really difficult. Mordred and his faction's job really, really difficult. All right.
All right, let's get it.
All right. Mordred was amazed at how the City of Giants had maintained itself over the ages. The red light of the magma rivers flowing around it illuminated the high walls and massive gates, and beyond it was the city itself. Buildings scaled for their inhabitants rose behind the fortifications. The inhabitants themselves wandering through the streets, male and female, some with fire in their hair, others appearing just like regular humans. So, we have a problem. Mordred licked his teeth as he ran his fingers down the hilt of his sword. The enemy is probably going to chase us no matter what happens. Whether I cut and run or fight to the death with Jormundir, the giants are going to chase us. Absently, he glanced at his arm where all the weapons he'd taken were stored. I might be able to create a very brief surge, but it won't last. Blowing out a deep breath, Mordred tapped on the weapons secreted in his arm and pulled on the power. Instantly, energy urged into him, but it quickly faded away to his normal capacity. I need a new vessel, he grimaced, reaching over and rubbing his deformed arm. But at least with the weapons in my arm, I'll be able to increase my capacity briefly during the fight, or so that I can change myself to facilitate an easier transport for the rescuee. Not wanting to keep stalling, Mordred pulled his sword free of the stone and leaned the long blade on his shoulder. Well, we've been through a lot together, he remarked to the sword. I have to say, I feel like you've always been mine, even though I've only used you for a few fights. Casually, he started walking down the path down the cliff toward the city. A set of bridges spanned the magma river, separating the city from on the thin shore and cave walls. Breathing in slowly to keep himself from panicking, Mordred strode onto the bridge and raised his sword. My name is Mordred, the Night Wolf, he yelled at the armored guard standing before the gate. I am here to demand the right of challenge against Jormundir the Giant. In unison, the two giants lowered their halberds at Mordred and seemed about to charge, but a yell from the wall top made him pause. If the Elder One demands the right of challenge, he must be allowed to address the king. Let him pass. Only a little relieved that the ancient custom still held true, Mordred strode between the two guards and walked through the slowly opening gates. All around him, the giant inhabitants of the city stared at him, 12 to 11-foot men and women, taking a moment to gawk at the bold, small, deformed humanoid thing walking through their streets. A pair of guards followed him, their silvery armor and diamond shields forged with single emerald flame carvings across the metal. Don't worry about me, he thought, as he kept on walking toward the central palace. I'm just here to fight your king in single combat. Well, he might die. That was always a possibility. Maeve huddled in the corner, another bout of terror ripping through her. Every few hours, the giant turned his attention on her, inflaming her fear and causing her to drop to the ground. Rubbing her arms, she shivered, trying to get control of herself, but the intense terror still raged inside her. They don't need this cage, she thought. They could just paralyze me with terror. My king, a giant wearing a suit of armor, rushed into the throne room, expression urgent. The Night Wolf has come. The giant king immediately straightened and took notice, eyes glowing a more vibrant red. The messenger kept on blurting his message. He has demanded the right of challenge against you, sire. Good. The giant wrapped his metal-crowned fingers around his crude weapon and clanged the tip against the ground. "Send in the challenger." A pair of giants entered the room, leading a man in blue and silver armor, a strange hood and metal cap obscuring his face. As if he were greeting an old friend, the Giant King extended a hand toward the stranger. "Welcome to the underground kingdom, Mordred." He clanged his curved blade against the ground. "So you have come to face me, just like old times. I remember the first time we battled thousands of years ago. You only had a sling and some stones, and you bet that you could knock me down. I didn't realize who you were. I just thought you were a skinny youth and accepted your challenge." He laughed uproariously, then his face soured. "I regretted that choice as soon as the stone struck my head and toppled me to the ground. I despise being humiliated." "It has been a long time, Jorma dear." Maeve paused and strained her ears. That voice was familiar. Pushing down her fear, she stood up and approached the bars of her cage, trying to get a good look at whoever had come. "So you have come to rescue the little maiden." The giant tapped his fingers against the arm of his throne. "However, in order to justify me facing you, you're going to need to put something into the pot as part of the wager." "I wager Artorius's sword against the life of the High Priestess." The knight raised his hand and summoned a sword that was nearly 6 feet long. "It seems like a priceless object for a human life is a bargain for me." Dromedary narrowed his eyes and leaned forward. "Well now, that old friend." That last held no more. A warmth. "Is a worthy wager. If I could have that, then all would tremble before me." Abruptly, the voice clicked in Maeve's mind. It was slightly different than she remembered, but the intonations and pitch hadn't changed. "Arthur?" she called. "What are you doing here?" Sighing, the knight pulled back his hand to his hood and pulled it back, the helmet vanishing to smoke as the cloth pooled around his neck. Instinctively, Maeve put her hand to her mouth to cover a gasp. It wasn't the Arthur she'd seen several years ago when she'd visited Prince Alf. He visited Prince Alfar. It looked like Arthur from his mid-20s when he was a low-ranking officer in the Northern Bard Army. But there were stark physical abnormalities, like the scar-like ridges running from his cheekbone onto his chin all the way down his neck. She swallowed, trying to get hold of herself, but this was just too much to take in, especially in her terrified state. Jormundir glanced at her and chuckled. "Whoever this body once belonged to, it's Mordred's now," he said. "It seems you know his vessel at least, which could make this interesting." "So my friend is dead?" She trailed off, staring at the newcomer. "I'm sorry." Mordred put his sword tip on the ground and rested his hand upon it. "It wasn't my intention to cause anybody pain. I'm surprised that you took the body of a human, and you got such a bad process getting yourself into that body that several pieces were mangled." Jormundir tilted his head. "What exactly happened? I'm intrigued to hear how such misfortune befell you." "I took the body and already made for someone. I took a body meant for somebody else," Mordred explained. Arthur was already dead when I entered his body. Maeve covered her mouth. No, she whispered, horrified at the implications. Quite so. Jormundir ponderously stood up and pointed his weapon at Mordred. So, shall we? May I speak to her? The strange man asked, pointing at Maeve. She seems extremely distraught. That tends to happen when one of the small folk is taken here. Jormundir shrugged. Very well. Maeve swallowed and tried to shrink back, but as soon as he got close, for whatever reason, the fear that had been pushing against her vanished like smoke. Immediately she straightened, feeling some of her old confidence rising inside her. You're the one everyone's been talking about, she adjusted her dress. You're the one that has declared himself the Herald of Guinevere. Yes, Mordred put out his hand. And you are the High Priestess, Maeve Gemina Elasisi. He looked her over and shook his head, face disgusted. It appears he's been fear-rioting you for days. Sighing, he put out his hand. If I may be allowed, he offered, I'd like to repair some of the damage done to the fear response section in your brain. I don't really know you, she shook her head. How do I know I can trust you? Test me, Mordred shrugged. It says test me to see if I am true or false. Maeve thought for a moment. What was the injunction Guinevere gave you? Feed my lambs, Mordred said automatically, and as she said it, she felt the truth of his words. She told me before I went on a long journey to a distant part of the kingdom that it requested our help with an outbreak of a deadly illness. What was the disease? Maeve asked. It was the result of a demon named Thrax, Mordred recounted smoothly. It's called blast burn, as far as I remember. You know the answers, Maeve swallowed. So you're... She couldn't say it. Yes, I'm the Herald, Mordred nodded. Anyway, just letting you know, we're probably going to have to move very fast in a few moments. Wait, what? Maeve paused and stared at him, somewhat glad that she didn't have to breach the topic she'd been unable to fully bring herself to say. We're going to have to run once I beat him. Mordred said quietly. They aren't going to be very pleased that I killed their king. So when that happens, or if I see an opportunity to get you out, be prepared to run. Okay, she swallowed and nodded. I'll trust you. Here, Mordred extended his hand. Take my hand. Somewhat hesitant, Maeve reciprocated his gesture. As soon as her hand touched his, a feeling of courage and peace floated through her, so powerfully she felt like her fear was being washed away. This should help, he smiled. Even if I lose, this will combat anything he does to you emotionally. Thank you, she whispered, touching her chest. Her heart seemed to burn within her. She felt like she could stare down a lion and not flinch. Smiling, Mordred patted her shoulder, then looked back to Jormundir. So, what are the terms of the duel? He asked, walking to the side so he could stand directly in front of the throne. Glad the formalities are still being observed after all this time. The giant slowly rose to his feet. First to cripple his enemy wins. For some reason, Mordred prepared to slice open his palm, but Jormundir charged and swung his crude curved blade at him before he had the chance. Mordred slid out of the way of the giant's sword, the weapon flinging up chunks of rocks that crashed into the ground. A horrible wave of fire rushed toward him, but Mordred changed the flames to steam and leaped at his enemy, rising above Jormundir's head and swung down with all his strength. Before Mordred could land a strike, Jormundir raised his armored forearm and deflected the sword off the metal and hurled him backward. Before he could crash into the ground, Mordred lowered his gravitational pull by tying himself in 3 directions. Sword clutched in his good hand, Mordred had skidded across the ground, armored boots kicking up dust. Fiery veins burst from Jormundir as the giant charged, flames wreathing the curved blade as it swung at him. Fear spiked inside Mordred as the heat brushed against him, a primal, visceral terror that clawed out of his mind and tried to paralyze him as his enemy pursued him. Sensing his fear, Jormundir created orbs of fire around him, then shot them toward Mordred. Grimacing, Mordred drew on his limited energy and changed the fire to steam, dissipating it into the air. Without pausing, Jormundir slammed his fist into the ground, transforming it into red-hot magma that washed toward Mordred, leaving a large swath of warped stone behind it. This time, the fear was even worse. Vivid memories of being chained in an ever-flowing river of magma, being burned for centuries, unable to move, alone, not knowing if he'd fail to protect the people he loved. Instinctively, he screamed and slammed his sword against armed it to the ground and created a wave of purple fire that chilled the magma, spreading toward him. Growling, he changed his gravitational pull and leaped upward, the ceiling dragging him upward before he doubled the pull downward. Jormundir raised his sword, but Mordred drew in all the power of the weapon stored in his body and slammed Caliburn onto his enemy's blade with a one-handed blow. The force of the strike staggered the giant, and just enough for Mordred to adjust in midair and slash it at his opponent's arm. Roaring, Jormundir shifted just enough for the cut to only be a glancing blow, but as Mordred fell to the ground, he slashed again, this time at his opponent's leg. Unable to block him, Jormundir tried to move his leg back, but Mordred's sword struck his knee with a slight tug on his right arm. The giant screamed and dropped to his good knee, allowing Mordred to leap into the air and aim a strike at his enemy's sword arm. Before the blow could be struck, the giant raised his other arm to defend himself. The sword cut through the steel and flesh with a crunch, dropping the arm to the ground. Mordred ended on the ground right before the arm struck the stones beside him, swords held to the side. "It is over." Mordred slowly straightened and pointed his blade at his enemy. In an instant, the flesh reformed, and Jormundir swung his crude sword at Mordred, fire spraying from the weapon. Fear spiked inside Mordred as the flames brushed against him, scorching his flesh like he was in the lava again. "I will not be beaten by a cripple," Jormundir bellowed as Mordred leaped backward, screaming and pushing healing magic into his face and body. He was running out of power. He'd need to recharge soon. "You lost your limbs!" Mordred smacked a blow aside with his sword, using a burst of strength from his weapons to match the giant's might for one brief moment. Jormundir's blade was knocked to the side just enough for Mordred to back away and quickly draw in some of his power into his fragile vessel. "That was the condition." "I will not defeat until you are dead, little man," Jormundir growled. "You will burn." "Fine," Mordred snarled back. "Then I'll take her away from here." The giant charged, but Mordred adjusted his gravitational pull and skated along the ground around his opponent in a wide arc. Jormundir blasted the ground with fire, but Mordred pulled himself onto a column and landed feet first, then quickly slid around it before a tendril of fire could hit him. Bellowing like an enraged bull, Jormundir slammed his sword into the pillar, transforming it to lava and launching it at Mordred. Spinning in midair, Mordred adjusted his pull to a spot near the cage. He skidded along the ground, feet slick as if they'd been oiled. "Get to the side!" Mordred yelled as he swung his sword. Maeve leaped to the side as he slashed the bars with a strong backswing that did the same at the bottom. Acting quickly, Maeve hurried out of the cage and took his outstretched hand. Drawing in as much power as he could, Mordred changed himself. Pain racked his body as his form shifted from human to a horse-sized wolf, fur sprouting along his body and his bones warping and shifting as his skin stretched. Dropping to all fours, he crouched down to allow her to climb onto his back. She obeyed quickly, pulling herself onto his back and grabbing a hold of a pair of gaps in his armor. "Hang on!" Mordred created straps to tie her to his armor, then galloped toward one of the open windows leading into the open air. gotta save me! She screamed as they flew into the empty air and gripped the handholds as tightly as she could. For a moment, they plummeted toward the buildings below them. Before they could slam into the buildings, however, Mordred adjusted the flow so he skidded along the roofs and rebounded off stones toward another building. Ah! Maeve clutched edge to the straps and started hyperventilating. Ah, please don't! Ah! Mordred leaped into the air, adjusting his gravitational grip as a rain of fire started falling toward them. Flames brushed past him, but none of them struck him before he could turn them to steam. Maeve hung on tight, clearly terrified as he dodged and wove through the air, constantly adjusting himself to avoid getting hit. Bellowing, the huge giant landed on the rooftops and started running after them as Mordred slammed into the wall of the cave, paused first as he galloped along the wall as if it were level ground. He's closing in on us! Maeve shrieked as they dodged another blast of fire and ended on the walkway ledge. Growling, he kept on running, feeling his strength diminishing with every second. You will not escape! Jormundir slammed feet first into the wall and slung his sword at them. Thinking quickly, Mordred let his gravitational shift fall away, letting them tumble toward the heat of the abyss below them. Chunks of rock sprayed all around them, but nothing but air struck them as they plummeted into the chasm. Before they could fall more than a few hundred feet, Mordred adjusted himself again and ran up to the top of the wall, to the large open cavern. Growling, Mordred quickly pulled in a bit of strength, just enough to take off running again. I have to reach the lift, he thought as his side began to ache. Okay, we got a little bit more. He thought, despite how much power he was pulling into himself, he could only keep running and pushing strength into his leg to keep it from going limp. Finally, after what felt like hours of hard running, they arrived at the lift. Mordred skidded to a halt, then pulled in additional power and transformed back to his human shape. Pain racked him for a brief moment, then he was himself again. Breath coming in spurts, Mordred leaned against the ground, pulling power into himself to cleanse his pains and tiredness. Grunting, he extended his hand to summon his sword and used it to prop himself up. Go, he grunted, glancing backward toward the fiery glow that suffused the tunnel behind them. I have to fight him to the death if I'm going to get him to stop. He won't fit in there, and if you don't come with me, you'll be trapped down here with him. They pointed at the passage where Jormundir was rapidly approaching them from. No, Mordred had pulled in as much power as he could, instantly refilling his reserves. Feeling resigned to his fate, he leaned his massive sword against his shoulder. Go, please. I can risk myself, but not you. Maeve stared at him for a moment, clearly stunned. Then she did something that nobody had ever done to Mordred before. She got close to him, put her hands on his cheeks, then kissed him full on the mouth. For a moment, he was completely frozen, so stunned he couldn't move. Then he noticed how his body was reacting. There was a definite marked increase in blood flow that had gone to his groin, and his arm had moved to wrap around her waist unconsciously as she conspicuously and deliberately pressed herself against him. He also couldn't miss the fact a noticeable swelling at his waistline, but she didn't seem to care. Finally, she pulled back and gave him a searching look, as if she were trying to gauge his reaction. Well, I can't defend her. That was the best and only kiss I've ever gotten, he said honestly. Really? She asked, putting her fingers to her lips. Never been kissed? No, this was my first time, Mordred smiled. Yeah, it was mine, too, she admitted. I just thought I should kiss my future husband before he went off. Mordred was about to respond to the first bit, then the middle of the second section hit him. Wait, what? He tried to make his tone as neutral as possible and failed miserably. She pulled away and stared at him. Didn't you write that the herald should care for the high priestess as his wife? I said as if she were his wife. Mordred breathed out slowly, trying to placate her. I can't procreate. Being in this body is the first time for me possessing anything related to human physiography. Oh. He sounded disappointed. Well, I'm sorry. I'd be willing to try it again, he put in quickly. It was a different kind of experience. In a good way. Oh, the smile returned. That's good. Yeah, we'll have to talk sometime, but I have a giant to slay. Mordred put his hand on her shoulder and urged her toward the lift. Press the circle in the center. That'll send you up to the surface. Nodding, Maeve ran inside and put her foot on the raised circle, activating the mechanism. I'll wait for you. I'm not going up that way, Mordred thought, glancing toward the tunnel they'd been running down. I'm going through the mountain. And that's the end.
John, what the hell? The way you described that! What? Oh my goodness. Oh, on a serious note, I love the fight scenes. There was a little bit that I missed because I had to go to the restroom and I had to walk away for a bit. So I'm gonna rewatch all of this, what I missed on Tarek's as well as yours. So the fight scene with the giant was great, and your delivery of the dialogue, though a wee bit, just a tad bit cheesy, was pretty good. It was a tad bit cheesy, but I'm sure that you'll just edit that over time and make it more you're what you're trying to go for. But the goddamn done. How did you describe? I didn't write it down. The way you described his lower region, I forget what you wrote, but I was like, "Are you serious?" The way you wrote that was ridiculous.
I got lost when you said gravitational pull. I was going.
Oh, that was awesome.
Did he mean center of gravity? What the fuck?
No, did you mean that literally? Like the giant or Mordred were quite literally
caught
moving gravity?
Yeah,
because that's freaking awesome. That is awesome.
I thought I was misunderstanding what he was saying, but no, he literally means like gravitational pull. Oh, what is it? I'm reminded of the Family Guy gag where Brian throws an apple at Peter. What is this? Some kind of gag? No, that's orbit. What? You're generating your own gravitational pull.
Yeah. So kind of the idea is that this guy has never had any physiognomy before. He basically used to be just a person that didn't have any biological responses to stuff like this. This is his first time being kissed, and he's just clinically thinking through what exactly is going on. Without fully, because this is the first time this has ever happened to him.
Oh yeah, I would say that the way you've been building up those two over the numerous chapters so far, it was earned, and it was a payoff. It makes perfect sense. I was so thrown off by that very specific description that I was like, what the hell? I was like, okay, that stands out in this entire thing.
That's kind of what I love about Dunn's storytelling. It's so mundane for the most part, but then you get to a point where something is said or something is done that makes you do a double take, like, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's exactly what just happened here. I can see that now.
What the hell?
Yeah. So is this like the second to last chapter, and the next one's the final chapter, or two more to go?
There are 4 more chapters.
Oh, neat.
All right.
Yeah, this is getting pretty exciting, and that was a very great fight scene.
Yep.
It was well done. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for the next one. I don't know how else to just. I didn't know how to humdrum, then suddenly incest.
Goddamn, Becca.
That is actually not inaccurate of Wrath of the Dragon.
Oh God. I'm sorry. That's the reason I've shared this before, but that's the reason why I refuse to get into Game of Thrones, despite how popular it is. I don't care. Something that's based off a plot that's based off of incest is not a plot I'm willing to get invested in. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. I don't care how good or popular it is. Not happening.
Fair enough. Hi, Washia.
Hey.
He has returned and completely
He
missed
got-
my portion, as well as
He,
Jake's.
yeah, he missed mine too.
Yep.
Well, yeah. I mean, I got back home and like I actually do have to get going in, like a few more minutes. I just thought I've been in the chat for a while now anyway, so don't worry. I got through. I was listening to your question section at the end, Axula. Done. You can see my thoughts in there. I was that threw me off.
Oh, that was great.
What?
What? What am I can't see that. I'm on my phone. Can't see that well. I got multiple tabs open.
Yeah, Tarek expressed my thoughts on that quite succinctly.
Okay, it's the bad guys who do the incest in Game of Thrones, to be frank, unlike in Dunn's story. Alright, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I guess it fits on the bad guy's side, but I hate stuff like that. I'm sorry, I hate it.
Yeah,
I was never really into Game of Thrones to begin with.
At least they are not the guy and the two sisters he's married to are only adopted siblings.
Oh, okay, that's not bad.
So it's a porno, then.
It's a
What are you doing, step bro?
Oh no. No. This is cursed. This is cursed.
It's very cursed. I have to agree.
Oh man, someone's got
I'm so glad you noticed.
See?
Ah, no. That was perfect.
That was well played.
Oh, I absolutely do, straight up. Honestly, I'm just sick and tired of like fictional stuff with like really dark, disgusting messages to them. I hate that crap.
Yeah.
You know what? I completely agree. I'm so sick of people culturally appropriating Alabama.
Yeah.
What culture is there to appropriate from Alabama anyway?
Well, unironically, that's where a majority of my family like went to after like they left England.
Oh, you poor soul.
If I cut myself, I actually do bleed blue.
Interesting.
Very peculiar.
I love that. It's
But
it's technically not incest. They just think it is. It's hell.
Yes, Becca. Absolutely agreed. This like freaking please, no incest. Not even a suggestion of it. Says the guy who wants
trust, Becca. Good morals. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My story is all about good morals. It's all about forgiveness and touching on things like racism and just stuff like that. So yeah, good morals all around. Forgiveness,
children
compassion.
become child soldiers.
Yours is about a little girl who's getting bullied into being growing up.
It's being a spy.
Yep. Yours is very character focused and quite good in that sense. And done. To bring it back, good stuff. I'm enjoying this story. I'm looking forward to how it concludes.
Yeah, like
I write good stuff.
This is why we should read Dunn's books.
I wish I had a banjo right now, right after he said, I write good stuff, and I could go,
Sweet.
There's no respect. That is also true.
Oh man.
and, yeah.
This showcase.
As much as we harp on and rag about it was actually pretty decent. So.
This showcase is a gem.
Honestly, it went.
Oh my goodness.
Honestly, it went a lot better than I thought it was going to go.
What did?
Like I expected.
Yeah.
I expected this to be like a repeat of last week.
What?
So-
Wait, what? What's that? Oh, last week was great.
On my end, I mean.
Last week was rich, especially when Aspiring went and we just that whole vampire twerking thing. Oh, that was beautiful.
I missed it.
basically,
You guys just watched the
didn't
entirety
realize
of last week's. It was just solid gold.
he said her haunches twitched or something along those lines.
Yeah, he said her haunches raised, and he was thinking that was a word for shoulder blades. And Dunn showed the definition of haunches on screen.
Ah, she's twerking. I get it. I understand.
It's one book, and I haven't published it yet. And then there's the next book where it has two aunts seducing their nephew.
Quick question, Dunn. Do you self-publish?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. That explains how you do it so fast.
I was going to say, because I can't imagine a publisher looking at this and going, oh, yeah, not on a Christian audience. We're good.
Especially not Shadow Mountain, which is basically the LDS publishing agency.
Jesus Christ, man.
Oh, man.
I haven't written it yet. I'm just in the process of writing the 3 books leading up to it. And
3 books anyway, it's fucking their nephew.
Yep.
That's so casual. Like, yeah, this is just a common thing in Utah.
No, it's just common thing.
Becca, I did, and I called you out out on it while you guys were flirting with one another. I listened to Wissia's chapter. I listened to Aspiring, and then I listened to Dunn. And then I saw in the chat y'all were just going nuts with random waving my hands around right now.
Alrighty. Well, we'll call it good for today, and there's only one thing I can say to you guys.
Oh boy.
Go!
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going.
Go!